Okay, so welcome everyone to day one of the FastTrack program. And as you can see on your screen, the focus today is your acquisition strategy and deal sourcing. Now, I know that some people just want to dive straight in to the advanced stuff, but let's get these basics, let's get these fundamentals right first, because the way I see people go wrong when it comes to buying businesses is that they don't have a strategy to start off with, and then they don't know, therefore, how to source deals to fit that strategy. And they're all over the place. So what I'm going to be helping you do today is to get focused. And whenever I spend time with someone helping them get focused, I know that they are then set up for the future. It takes the random events out of which business do I buy. That's a shiny object. That's another shiny object over there, and being pulled from pillar to post with all different types of businesses. So we're going to focus on an acquisition strategy and also how to find those deals. So how do you get the most out of this program? Something is really, really straightforward. It's really, really simple. First of all, just focus. Turn off all distractions. I can absolutely tell when someone hasn't been concentrating when they ask me questions later on about things that I know that I covered word for word. So turn off your distractions. You really can do what I do, which is put your phone on silent, turn it over so you can't see the notifications, and that really helps. You can do it for 2 hours, I can assure you, and have a positive, open mind. I would say that one of the things that holds people back in being successful when it comes to buying a business is they have a negative attitude where everything is a problem. They never see a solution, and they make everything far more difficult than it needs to be. And actually, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of someone I was helping recently whose whole mindset was wrong. And and the other thing, by the way, is you've got to overcome procrastination. This program is only as good as what you do with it. So you've got to overcome any procrastination. I'm going to help you with that, but you've got to keep an open mind. And let's keep the questions later on relevant to today's subject matter. And I know some people are very tempted to type questions as we go along, but I can assure you the best way of doing it is to save it to later, because most probably the question that you're typing in 5 minutes time, first of all, I won't be able to read it because I'm talking to everyone here, is probably going to be answered in 10 minutes time. Okay, so if we do it that way, I can assure you you'll get the very best out of this program. So key outcomes for today: you'll know how to create a deal making strategy. That's obviously very important. You'll know how business brokers work. And this is a big part of the business buying and business selling industry. And I'll show you how they work. I will give you my cynical insider's view on business brokers. I'll tell you how they're paid and why they are not motivated to sell you a business. And you'll also know how to create deal flow, but the deal flow will not come from business brokers. I absolutely assure you of that. So by the end of today, you'll be able to go out and find businesses to buy that fit some sort of strategy. Now, throughout today and throughout the week, you'll be having what we call light bulb moments. You'll be having light bulb moments where you go, aha, that is the thing that I need to do, or that is the way forward. I'd like you to save those up, because the first thing I'm going to be asking you at the end of each webinar is, what was the light bulb moment for you? What was the exciting moment for you? So let me give you, first of all, the jargon buster. Now, on the introductory webinar that you probably saw, which is why you are here, or maybe on the stuff that you see on YouTube. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Business Buying Strategies podcast. You'll find that great value. You'll notice that I keep it jargon free because I want to make the information very accessible. Now that you've stepped up, you've got you're on the first rung of the ladder, if you like, we can start introducing some jargon, some technical terms, because it'll be a lot easier for me to teach you this stuff if I can use the terminology that I use every day. But if you understand it, then clearly we're going to be way ahead. So when we talk about the payment for a business, we refer to it as the consideration. Doesn't have to be just money. It can be other you can pay for businesses in other ways other than money, but usually it's the money that is paid for the business. And then we've got a subset of consideration. We've got the initial consideration, and this is the amount that would be paid on completion. And then we've got what we call deferred consideration, and this is what we might pay, that we pay the balance of the consideration, and we paid over time. So we're deferring it into the future. And then we've got the word completion, and this is the moment that the company or the assets legally become yours. And I actually believe that we are completing on a deal. It should have been Friday, but completing on a deal this afternoon. I'll let you know if that happens. It'd be lovely timing if it happens during the webinar today. And actually, just on the point of timing, I hope you've cleared your diary for the next 2 hours, because we've got an awful lot to cover over the next couple of hours. And then we've got EBITDA. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And this is, if you think in terms of net profit, you can't go too far wrong. So thinking along the lines of net profit, EBITDA are those the earnings before any payments out in interest, like loan interest, in tax, in anything that depreciates or anything that amortizes. We're going to talk a little bit about deal sourcing. This quite simply is finding businesses to buy. And then we're going to be talking about business brokers. And business brokers are like estate agents. They're the go-between who get paid for advertising and selling businesses. And as you'll discover during the webinar today, they really just get paid for advertising businesses. The selling of the businesses is way down the list of priorities. We're also going to talk about deal team. So this is your lawyer, your accountant, HR, due diligence, really anyone who helps you make a deal happen. And this can be an evolving team, because you're not going to have necessarily the same people required for each deal. Later in the week, I'm going to tell you how to construct your own deal team. So later in the week, I'm going to tell you how to find the right people to work with you. And due diligence is something that you'll hear me say quite a lot. And this is in the simplest terms, the checking that your deal team perform to establish the performance and validity of the business. Why do you need this? Well, here's the first big truth of the day, is people selling a business don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the whole truth. They miss things out. They miss out the things that they think would damage the value of the business. They miss out the things that they think might put you off buying the business. So the due diligence allows you to check that you are buying what you think you are buying. Now, tomorrow, we're going to talk about the difference between buying shares and assets, and why if you buy shares, you need a higher level of due diligence than if you're buying assets. Now, the key thing to remember about due diligence is that on very simple businesses, it might be something you can do yourself, but the chances are you are going to outsource this to someone else. And the chances are that person is going to be your accountant for what we call the financial due diligence. And it's going to be your lawyer for what we call the legal due diligence. And I'll talk more about due diligence as the week goes on. So here is my first message of the week, which is, if you currently own a business right now and you are managing that business day to day, you are damaging the value of the business. You're damaging the value of it. So what you want to be doing if you own a business right now is to get yourself off the org chart, the organizational chart. So everything that you do on a day-to-day basis is done by other people. Why? Because it's going to be so much easier to build a group of companies and then sell it if you are not someone who's involved in the day-to-day running of the business you currently own. Now, some people on the webinar don't yet own a business. So you might think, well, this isn't applicable to me. It is. The last thing you want to be doing is buying a business and ending up running the business. You see, this is not about creating a job for yourself. Now, if your current business is really a well-paid or maybe a not so well-paid job, you can use an acquisition to remove yourself from the day-to-day running of the business. And you need to work on the business rather than in the business. Now, if you've ever read Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, which he published about 30 years ago, I remember very clearly when it was like the book of the week in the Times, when it just came out, and the E-Myth, which is well worth buying, even though it's 30 years old, it's well worth buying it. Is really summarized in a couple of sentences, and one of those sentences is, you work on the business rather than in the business. And I would guess, and I think it's probably quite an accurate guess, that the majority of people who own businesses are deeply involved in the day-to-day running. And when you buy a business, you make your existing business bigger. And as a result, you could probably hire someone to take over your job, or you can take what you do and you can split it up across several people. The key thing is, if you are involved in the day-to-day running, you will hold it back, plus you will not be able to reach your acquisition goals. So in the sector that I started investing in 14 months ago, maybe 15 now, 15 months ago, we have, we've got several deals that are at we've legally exchanged, but we've not yet completed, including the one this afternoon. We'll have 15. We'll have 15 individual businesses around the country, most in the north of England, but also some in Essex. Now, if I was involved in the day-to-day running of those businesses, it would be absolute chaos for a start, because it's not really my skill set at all. But it would just be, my brain would be fried every day. My focus is finding more businesses to buy for us to hit our targets between now and Christmas. So this is a critical point, because I see often people looking to buy a business and I say, who's going to run it? And then they say, oh, I'm going to run it. All right. So that's the first thing. You've got to get that really clear in your mind. This is not a job. Now, this next slide has quite a few words on it, but it's a very interesting concept. And I want you to just take this slowly, because if you understand why we are buying and selling businesses, and you'll realize how financially beneficial it is to you, then you will never look back. So let's think ahead 20 years. So if you've got a business, you just have one business, maybe it's a business you buy, or maybe it's a business that you currently own. You've just got one business, and the next 20 years, you're going to take profit out of that business. Let's say, for ease of numbers and just the simplicity of it, is £100,000 a year. So you're going to make £2 million of personal income profit that you've taken out of the business over the next 20 years. Now, let's say you do what we talk about this week, and you become a deal maker rather than a doer. We call them doers, the people who sit behind desks just doing things. And you sell 4 businesses over the next 20 years. So you do what we're talking about this week, and you sell them at a multiple of 7 times. That's 7 times its annual profit. You will add an additional 28 years of income on top of the 2 million you would have got anyway. So you get the 2 million anyway, plus you get an additional 28 years of income, because you'll be selling that business, or what it's a group or whatever it might be, for, let's say, an average of 7 times profits. So you're adding an extra 7 years of profits in 1 year. So if you look at the last sentence on the screen there, a doer, the person in our example who makes 100,000 a year over the next 20 years, earns 2 million over 20 years. But the deal maker doing what we're talking about this week will earn 4.8 million over the next 20 years. And the difference is learning how to buy a business, which is what you are here to do. So if you're not yet convinced, hopefully when you see it in black and white, or black, white, and orange like this, you will realize that this has to be the way forward. Here's another little concept I want you to get excited about. How do you pay yourself a deal fee? Let me explain to you what I mean. A deal fee is a bonus, if you like, that you pay yourself to reward yourself for being the smart person who went out and found a business, negotiated the deal, and did the deal. You get a deal fee. Now, in the world of private equity, this is standard. All of the financing for acquiring a business in the private equity world incorporates a deal fee. I was selling a business 4 or 5 years ago, and the private equity buyers sent me a spreadsheet that I wasn't meant to see. It wasn't meant for me. It was attached in error to the email. And I didn't realize that it was attached in error until I looked at it. And they built into the financing for the acquisition of my business a £600,000 deal fee. So this is the way to think about it. Most people think, well, if I'm going to buy a business, I'll make some money while I own it. Well, of course, we want that to be, that's good cash flow. And I'll make money when I sell it. Yep, we know that, but that's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 years hence. And by the way, it shouldn't be any more than 4 years. You know, it should be in the foreseeable future. Most people own businesses for way too long. They hold on to businesses for 10, 15 years, and the value just goes down, 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 rather than up, 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 up. But here's the third way to make money when you buy a business. You pay yourself a deal fee on completion. Now, you can't do this with every type of business. And I have clients on my higher level programs who are only buying businesses where they can pay themselves a deal fee. And let me tell you the thinking process about that. Look, we all want to make money while we own the business, but let's say there was another COVID type situation that's, you can't predict. And we all want to make money when we sell the business, but let's say there's some change in the market or in that sector, which means we can't sell it. Well, look, we don't want to do this for nothing. So can we buy the business and make money on day one? So if we don't make money while we own it and we don't make money when we sell it, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter because we've made money on day one. And the businesses that you find are the easiest to pay yourself a deal fee from are businesses with high levels of fixed assets, of plant, machinery, buildings, that sort of thing, and businesses that have good quality business debtors. So people who haven't yet paid their invoices or they're on some sort of contract and they haven't yet paid, but are business to business customers. But we can return to these concepts when they make a bit more sense. I just wanted to give you several things to think about to get you excited about what is ahead of you. Now, here's another thing that I really want to drive home nice and early. Buying a business is 80% sales and marketing and 20% legal and accountancy. Let me explain to you what I mean. Buying a business is all about finding the right business to buy. Well, that's a marketing process. Doing the deal, negotiating the deal. In many ways, that's almost like a sales process. You've got to sell that person on buying, on selling the business to you. And then the paperwork side of things, the legal and accountancy, I outsource to other people. I don't do that. So that's what the deal team are there for. So when you start thinking that buying a business is really a sales and marketing process, that's why I never get caught up in all the legal and accountancy stuff, simply because other people can do that better than me. This is a great opportunity for me to give you the disclaimer that I'm sure you've heard me say before, but I'll say it again, is that I am not a lawyer. I never give legal advice. I'm not an accountant. I don't give financial advice. I don't give tax advice. I just tell you what I do. Now, do I know my way around a sale and purchase agreement? Of course I do. Do I understand the numbers in a business? Of course I do. But I actually think that my lawyer and my accountant know way better than I do. So I let them do that bit and I go and find businesses to buy and negotiate the deal. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about, especially tomorrow and Wednesday, is going to be around finding those businesses. And today, of course, finding those businesses and then doing the deal. Because if you can't do the deal, you can have the best accountant and the best lawyer in the world, but they will never have any work to do because you can't do the deal. You've got to be able to do the deal. But you'll come out of this program being able to do the deal. So the question is, what is your strategy going to be? Now, I've got to say, I'm very aware that this is a sticking point for some people. So if you're nodding along with me and go, yeah, absolutely, it's my sticking point, then I'm going to demystify it for you. I'm going to demystify this for you. So let's just think about this a little bit. Now, let's say you own an IT company. Well, your simplest strategy would be to buy another IT company and another IT company and create a big IT company and then sell that big IT company. I mean, that would be just so obvious. But you might be thinking out of the box. You might say, well, I'm an IT company. I want to develop into, have a software division. I want to have a telecommunications division. So I'm going to buy those complementary businesses to create this company that does several different things. So again, that's a pretty straightforward strategy. However, if you don't yet own a business, or you're actually in a business that you think the worst and last thing I ever want to do is to buy a business in the sector, we've got to do a little bit more thinking. And I'm going to help you through this thinking process. So there are 6 types of company to buy. Now, in the middle, we've got your core business. So that's the business that you've got right now. Now, if you don't yet have a business right now, you replace those words with the first business that you buy. So we call this your platform investment. So your existing business can be your platform investment, and we're going to build on top of that platform, or the first business you buy becomes your platform investment. Hopefully that makes sense. So we've got a platform to build on. Now, there are 6 different ways to build on that platform. The first is to look for product-based businesses. And this is especially relevant, I suppose, if it's a diversification from your service-based business. So product-based business is kind of obvious. Then we've got the flip side of that. We've got a service-based service-based business. So a service-based business, let's say, for example, you are currently supplying garden, gazebos and home offices for the garden, and you're supplying the benches and the arbors and all these things that people have in their garden. Well, you could add a service-based business, which can be a landscaping business, for example. So the two things kind of logically fit together. What many of my private clients do is look for suppliers. I will give you an example that is right at the top of my mind from last Friday. So last Friday, I was with some people in my private client program, and one chap said he just found so he's in the supply of signage and branded workwear and promotional gifts, anything that has a logo stuck on it. And he'd found a business in the screen printing world. So this is where they do these big, colorful posters. And he said to us, I already spend £800,000 a year with screen printers, and if I bought a screen printing company, that £800,000, well, first of all, he said they work on a 40% margin. So what's that? That's about, let's say, £300,000. So he said, I would actually be able to keep that business within the group, and I'd be saving hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And we worked out that the price that we'd pay for the business would be less than what he would save in a year. I mean, it is an absolute no-brainer to add a supplier like that to your existing company. And then if we look at the flip side, and this is distributors. So who distributes what you do? Who's at the other end? So when your product service goes out the door, is it a courier company? Is it some sort of retail outlet? Is it do you sell to a website? Do you sell to a website and that's where most of your product goes to? Well, possibly you should be buying a website so you can control that distribution, and therefore you will make more money in your existing business because you won't be paying that third party. Now, buying competitors is a very, very attractive prospect. simply because you can grow locally, you can grow regionally, you can grow nationally, you can even grow internationally by buying other people who are in your sector. And that is a great strategy. It's an obvious strategy. I use a case study quite often where I bought a competitor who was kind of, in terms of presence, was sort of neck and neck with us. And what was happening was that every customer was looking at us and looking at the competitor. And if they answered the phone faster than we did, we'd lose the business to them. So when I bought them, oh my goodness, business just took off like a rocket. And then you should look at complementary businesses, because complementary businesses make sense when put next to your core business. So these 6 options are ones that I would expect you to return to when you're doing your homework, so to speak, tonight with a piece of paper, looking at how you would grow your existing business by acquisition, or what your core business should be. Can I just give you a little anecdote here from a client that you may have heard me interview on the Business Buying Strategies podcast? His name's Darren. And his daughter came to him and said that she wanted to open a hairdressing salon. So he was going to support her. He has an IT company. He was going to support her opening a hairdressing salon. And then he thought, hang on, what am I doing? What would Jonathan say? So he went and he bought a hairdressing salon. But he had so many hairdressing salons approach him, he thought, well, hang on, maybe there's something I can do here. So he's bought 12 so far. It may even be more than that. His goal was 20 by the end of September. So we may be higher than 12 now. But last time I spoke to him 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was 12 hairdressing salons. And just to put that into the context of what's happening, lockdown and pandemic wise, of course, all the hairdressing salons closed. So, a lot of hairdressing businesses, or lots of businesses in general, only have enough money in the bank to see them through to the end of the month. Most businesses are 30 days away from being broke. So when he sent out a letter, and I'll show you how to do this, and I'll teach you how to do this today, Monday, then he sent out, let me get this right. He sent out 1,500 letters. Again, I'll show you how to do this later. Don't worry. This is such a good strategy. I'll teach it in great detail for you. And he had 300 responses. And that is where he found those hairdressing salons. And again, I'll go into detail about how to do this later on. Now, if you currently have a business, this is what you should be doing with your acquisitions. You should be repositioning your company for the highest exit value. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So if you just currently have a smallish business, you will never get paid very much for it when you sell, because it's a small business. You should be on a mission right now to turn that into a big business. If you have a business that traditionally sells at low multiples, i.e. however much work you put into it, you'll only be able to sell it for 1.5 times profit or 2 times profit, then I'd be thinking to myself, how can I buy other businesses to bolt on to my existing business to increase its value when I sell it? So these are some of the, I'm giving you things to think about so that you can start to put together a strategy that works for you personally. Now, defining the sector, to be fair, is always a tough one. And I've already had, just before we started the webinar, people were saying, what do you think of this sector? What do you think of that sector? But this is my philosophy on this. First of all, I would say keep it simple. Let's not create a strategy that's overcomplicated. Look at the hairdressing salons. How simple can that be? Someone comes in, they have their hair cut, they pay their money, they go home again. And they're back again in a month. So it's a very, very simple business model. I would always suggest that you are better off doing something that you already understand. Why? Because I think it gives you a little bit of an advantage. You don't have to learn how the business model works. It also gives you an advantage when you're looking at businesses to buy in that sector, if you already understand it, you won't have the wool pulled over your eyes. And likewise, when you're doing the due diligence to check that the business is what the owners have told you that it is, you'll kind of know what they might, you know what to look for. So I've got someone in my private client group who's buying web design and SEO, digital marketing type businesses. And because he already has a business in that sector, he kind of knows what to look for. He knows to look for churn. He knows to look for retention of clients, all of these things. And he gets it. He understands how it works. And therefore, it's a lot easier for him to acquire because he already understands it. Now, let's say you don't understand anything. Let's say you have no background at all in any particular type of business. So the third bullet on the screen explains to you what you should be doing in this situation. You should be buying something you can learn quickly. And I'm a decent example of that with my investments in the early years sector. I 14, 15 months ago, I didn't know anything about the nursery business. I now think I'm quite on top of it, shall we say, on top of the sector. I know how it works. And you know, we're the 25th largest chain in the UK, and there's like 16,000 providers. So we're the 25th largest group in just 14, 15 months. So it's something you can learn quickly. And also something that you can get help to understand. So I tell you what I did. I went on LinkedIn and I said, any of my connections own or involved in this type of business. I'd like to buy you a coffee and understand the business a little better. So they helped me understand it, and that I think is it's always good to ask for help. And then you need to always be thinking, I need someone to run it for you. Now, you may even start off a little bit back to front on this and say, I've got someone who is very knowledgeable about IT companies. They used to run an IT company. Maybe maybe they've semi-retired or retired, that maybe they're looking for a new challenge. And you start off with, look, I've got a great person to run it. So maybe I should be looking for businesses that when I buy them, this person who I trust can just get on with it and run it for you. And I think that, you know, oh, by the way, if you want inspiration for types of businesses, Google My Business, which is the is like a Google service, has a list of 4,000 within like 20, just under 4,000 businesses. So if you go Google My Business, business sectors, don't do it now because I want your concentration on this, but just jot that down in your pad because you'll get inspiration from nearly 4,000 types of businesses. So there's no shortage. I mean, most of us, if we sit there and think of sectors, we get a little bit of a brain freeze and we can only think of half a dozen. And of course, there's more like 4,000. Okay, so there's plenty of opportunities. So here are some sectors to potentially avoid. I don't mean you have to run a mile when you see these, but yeah, potentially they could be avoided. I'd start off with anything you don't understand. And I keep using IT companies as an example. Yeah, that would be the worst type of business for me because I just don't get it. To be honest, it's an absolute miracle that I can operate Zoom and speak to you today. Retail, well, for obvious reasons, right? And to be fair, it's been like this for a long time, and the lockdown and the pandemic have only really made it worse. Highly regulated markets. The exception to this is if you already have the licenses or the permissions to operate in that highly regulated market. Had a private client a while ago in the mortgage market, mortgage broker, and you have to be regulated for that. He already had the regulation. In actual fact, a colleague of mine is buying businesses in exactly that, mortgage brokers and some finance brokers, because he already has the correct approvals to operate in that market. Industry is subject to a lot of legislation. Many people avoid these simply because it's just too much of a headache. And industry is being disrupted. Industry is on the way out. I mean, what you don't want is a declining industry. Now, you might be buying a business that has declined, but the industry itself hasn't declined. So many of my nurseries recently have declined. I bought them as businesses that are a little bit stressed and distressed. However, that doesn't mean that the sector itself ultimately is distressed. It just means those businesses within it. Quite often, by the way, you can have a distressed business that is distressed purely for the reason that the owner is distressed. They've fallen out of love with it, and as a result, the business itself has taken a little bit of a downturn. So this is kind of your Venn diagram, if you like. You know, what are the opportunities out there? What are your skills and knowledge, and also a little bit about what are your personal goals? So let me just expand on this a little bit, because I've been working one-to-one with a couple of people on the private client program recently, and I just want to share some of the things that have sort of come out of those one-to-one discussions. I would be starting with the end in mind. Okay, so the end in mind means that you work out, and I hope I won't offend anyone when I say this so bluntly, but you work out how much money you want to make by selling these businesses. Because quite frankly, just to make this clear, just in case anyone's missed what we're talking about, you're buying businesses not because you want to just own businesses. You're buying businesses because they are an asset that you're going to increase in value. Talk about that later in the week, and then you're going to sell. Because there's no point just buying them and keeping them. There might be a good cash flow play there, but you can have good cash flow for 2 or 3 years, and then you can sell it and have that big lump sum in the bank. Now, if you know where you want to end up, then you can work backwards, okay, to what you need to do. So let me tell you about my SEO client and the conversation I was having with him just last week. He wanted in fact, actually, there were 2 people with sort of similar goals, a £5 million exit. Okay, so a £5 million exit. And in that sector, you can sell a business that has that sort of enterprise value for, let me just get my numbers right here, for about 7 times earnings. So he needs to have about £700,000 of profit to be able to sell it for 5 million. I said, okay, really simple. You need £700,000 worth of profit. All right. So we need to go and hunt down some businesses to buy, where when we put them all together, we get £700,000 of profit, and then we can sell them to someone else for £5 million. But here's the thing. You don't have to go and find businesses with £700,000 of profit. You might go and find businesses with a total of £400,000 of profit, because you're going to find extra profit by just putting them together and taking out your cost duplication, and it's just through the economies of scale of having a larger company. Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to be covering this a little bit later in the webinar today, is that you can buy a business at one price, and by combining it with other businesses that you bought for a similar low price, by virtue of it being part of a group, it's now worth more. So let me just give you an example. You might be able to buy a business at 3 times EBITDA. Remember what we said, EBITDA earnings, think net profit. But as a group, you could sell them for 7, 8, 9, 10 times EBITDA. So this is a little bit like, let me give you the analogy. This is a little bit like going to a car boot sale. And for those of you outside of the UK, you might call it, I don't know, a yard sale or something like that. You go to a car boot sale and you see an item on a table and you can spot value in it, but the owner of the item doesn't see the value, but you can see value. You can see a future in that item, okay? So you ask them how much they want for it, and they want £5 for it, and maybe you do a little bit of haggling and you would pay £3 for it, and you proudly got your item. You take it back and you start fixing it up, and you maybe clean it, and you fix the bits that are broken. And then you take it to an antique dealer, and the antique dealer gives you £500 for it. And all you've done in the middle is sort out the problems, if you like. It's dusty, it's dirty, it needs a bit of TLC. And that's what we're doing in many times with businesses. We're buying businesses that on the surface don't look amazing, but if they're part of a group, if they're cleaned up, they're going to be worth a lot more money. Now, let me tell you a challenge that some people create for themselves. They go looking for the perfect business to buy. And there isn't really a perfect business to buy. And quite often, if the business is too perfect, it's too expensive as well. The owners know that it's a perfect business, and it won't just be you looking at it. What I prefer to do is go in with a vision and go in with a belief in the future. And I see that dusty business that other people aren't really interested in because it's just all a bit dirty and a bit dusty. And quite frankly, many of the businesses we bought recently are quite literally dirty and dusty. And with a little bit of a clean up, a little bit of a polish and a new sign above the door and motivated staff and new uniforms, you start to lift the business. And then after just lifting the business, it starts to lift by itself. And a couple of years later, you can sell it for more than you bought it for. Okay. So we're trading businesses, if you like. So don't go looking for the perfect business. The chances are you won't find it and you'll always be disappointed. So we've got, generally speaking, two sides to this, two different categories, if you like. We've got profitable businesses and we've got distressed businesses. Well, profitable businesses would give you cash flow, which is the profit from day one. Typically, it's profitable because it has an established management team. It's an easy bolt-on to your existing business. Distressed businesses, often you can buy them for very little. You don't need any finance. You can acquire the assets and the contracts. You can manage the liabilities, and there is scope for cost cutting. And you bring fresh energy and perspective, and there's huge ROI potential. You may have heard me on the introductory webinar tell you about a business that I bought for £1, and 11 months later, I sold it for a very strong 7-figure sum. So the ROI potential is absolutely huge. But, and here's the but is buying a business that's distressed takes a lot more work, a lot more energy, and it's usually not something you want to do just by yourself. You need a bit of support. Okay, just to let you know that the upside might be bigger, but it also comes with a greater hassle factor, if you like. You might also want to think about geography. Keep it close until you have a trusted management team. You probably, I see sometimes people say they want to buy businesses in other countries. I mean, why not just buy, unless it's some sort of visa play, then why not just buy a business in the country that you live in? I mean, it kind of just makes sense to me to be able to go and touch it whenever you want. The majority of my current investments are in the north of England. I'm in London, so they're like 400 miles away, which obviously isn't particularly close, although I can get up there and back in 12 hours. I can get up there, spend some time around, come back. You may have seen some of my videos on YouTube where I go for a little tour of some of them, but I have a trusted management team. So they're up there at the moment doing what they need to do. So yeah, can I just make one point also about the geography? Someone recently, so I meet up with my the private clients on like a Zoom meeting where you can see everyone's faces. It's different to a webinar, you see everyone's faces. And one guy was telling me how he was doing some deal sourcing within 60 miles of his house. And it took me a moment to realize why he was saying 60 miles. And he was saying 60 miles because he wanted 1 hour of travel time. So he'd taken what I said on this slide very, very literally. And the challenge with that is in the business that he was looking to buy, which is the provision of educational items into schools. There were very, very few businesses within 60 miles of where he lived. I'm sure there's very few businesses like that within 60 miles of where anyone lives. So he needed to go wider in order to get the volume. So general rule of thumb, though, don't go buying them 1,000 miles away when you can buy them sort of under your nose. Now, how big should these businesses be? It needs to be big enough to make a profit. It's as simple as that. Everyone says, well, look, Jonathan, is that 500,000 or is that 1 million or is that 2 million or is it 250,000? Well, it's not a number. It's about whether it's big enough to make a profit once you've replaced the owner. Why? Because you need that profit to pay yourself. The profit is yours. Okay. So if business makes profit, I want you to translate that into that's money that I put in my pocket. Okay. So it needs to be big enough to make a profit. However, there's an exception. There usually is. The exception is when you are buying the contracts to roll into an existing business. So let's go back 10 minutes to my client who's buying the SEO companies, and he wants to get to his 700,000 EBITDA as quickly as possible. And he's telling you about some companies that he turned away, like one that was only turning 150,000. Yeah, he said it was just too small. And I said, yeah, by itself, it's too small. By itself, insignificant. To be fair, not worth very much by itself, which is good for you because you're the one doing the buying. However, if you take that 150,000 of contracts and pop it into your pot of businesses, oh, it's just another 150,000. Then that one over there is 200,000, and that one's over there is 300,000. That one's 100,000. You just pop them all in the pot and you mix them up because you're really just buying contracts in some businesses and you're rolling it all together, and therefore it has more value. And he's right, by himself. And what he said to me was, he said, I've turned away opportunities because I haven't thought big picture. So you need to think big picture. Otherwise, you'll if you're too critical of each business that you look at, you'll never buy a business, basically. Yeah, if you're too dismissive, you'll never buy a business. And also, I'd be thinking about the outcome that you want. Do you want this as a cash flow play? So with my current investments, there's not a huge amount of cash flow in those businesses right now, not enough to get excited about, and we want to buy more. So we're reinvesting what cash flow there is to buy more businesses. Maybe you want to make your existing business bigger and more profitable. Quite often I hear owners say, look, I'm at 500,000 revenue. If I could get up to 1 million, then suddenly the whole business would be so much more profitable. But I don't know how to get there. Well, buy a business. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Business Buying Strategies podcast. There's a great podcast interview with Ray. I think it was even last week, actually, this one came out, where he had a £500,000 a year business pre-lockdown. Post-lockdown, it's 3.4 million. He went out and bought 3 businesses, one at 400,000, one 1 million of revenue, and one at 1.5 million of revenue. Combined with his existing, gives us 3.4 million of revenue. So his existing business suddenly has become bigger and more profitable as a result. And by the way, none of those acquisitions required any of his own money. We go into that in more detail later in the week, by the way. You might want to buy your first business just for the experience. Now, I think this is a pretty good strategy. If you can buy a business for the experience, I mean, it's got to make sense. You're not going to go and buy a fish and chip shop necessarily, unless you particularly enjoy fish and chips. And you might think, hey, that's my Friday night dinner taken care of. But buy it for the experience of actually going through the sales process. And here's the thing. You can buy it. And if you don't want it after 6 months, you can sell it to someone else. You're not stuck with it forever. Yeah, it's like when you buy a car. Yeah, it's not the world's biggest decision, because you kind of know that you're probably going to sell that car and exchange it for another car in a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, or whatever it might be. So you're not stuck with a decision. Buying a business does not stick you with that decision. So I even considered one of the nursery schools I bought last year. I thought, well, maybe we could sell that one because it doesn't kind of fit with the portfolio. Yeah, so you can buy and sell. Now you need the right corporate structure. We talk about that over the next couple of days. And then your outcome might be to buy and build and create a group that you can sell. And I've got to say, a lot of people that I work with follow that route. I'm going to give you some examples later of how the numbers work in a buy and build strategy, which I hope will excite you. And maybe you want to buy a business and then flip it to someone else 6 months later. And if you want to do that and make a decent profit on it, as opposed to buy a business for the experience and then dispose of it for what you bought it for, maybe a little bit more, but typically what you bought it for, perhaps. I'd wait till you got a little bit more experience, simply because you've got to choose the right business in order to flip it and sell it on to someone else. So what does an attractive opportunity look like? Here are some guidelines. A growing market. Why? Because it's easier to ride a wave of success than it is to fight against the current, which is why you want to avoid these declining markets that are being disrupted, perhaps. So a growing market, simply because it's just so much easier to be swept along with everyone else's enthusiasm, and also a lot easier to sell in exit your group in a growing market. You want a business that finds customers easily. So maybe they've got a marketing methodology that just really works. Maybe they've got a great Google ranking. I know it doesn't last forever, but maybe they've got a good Google ranking, good marketing. Maybe a business that has some sort of barrier to entry that stops other people from jumping into that market. Now, this is like a shopping list of all the ideals, and you won't have all of these on every one. If you try to find all of these on every acquisition, you'll never buy anything. A business that has the ability to get bigger. So with my nursery schools, I look at nurseries that have the opportunity to be bigger than when I buy them. And then management. Does the business have management? And I think this is really, really important, because don't forget, you don't want to be buying a job, okay? You want someone else to be managing it for you. Is it a sustainable model? I mean, yeah, sometimes when you look at businesses to buy, the last 12 months have been stellar. You know, it was a kind of a pretty ordinary business, and the last 12 months profit is off the chart. Why? Because they're getting ready to sell. So is it sustainable? The chances are it isn't. I like businesses that you can improve, and I'll give you my super secret, if you like, of improving a business. Get rid of the owners as quickly as possible. They are typically the blockage in the business. The one that I'm hopefully completing on today, although it's every minute that goes past, it's less likely. It's going to be more likely tomorrow morning. But I'll tell you about it this week. Getting those owners out of the business is the first thing we're going to do. It has to be. The staff have been walking around with resignation letters in their bag. So, yeah, improve the business, remove the owners. And you want a committed seller. You want someone who's going to follow through on a sales process. You want someone who isn't going to change their mind at the last minute. I've got some ways to help you find that person, by the way. So let me give you my 10 critical rules for success. You cannot tell a good deal from a bad deal without deal flow. Now, just to remind you, deal flow is the flow of owners who want to sell contacting you. And by the end of this webinar today, you'll understand all about how to generate deal flow. But you need deal flow because you want to be able to compare deals. If you just spoke to one person interested in selling, you wouldn't know whether that's a good business or a bad business unless you can compare it to others. So I've probably looked at the accounts of maybe 200 businesses in my sector. So now I can look at the accounts of any business in my sector, and I can understand, is it a good business or is it a bad business? Is it more profitable than all the others? Is it less profitable? Where does it sit on this spectrum of good to bad? So you need the deal flow, another reason for getting that part of the puzzle working really well. Now, when you buy businesses, you're going to pay for what it's done in the past, but you're going to buy it for the future. And this is a critical distinction, because many people who are selling businesses will try and sell you on the future and expect you to pay for the future. We're not paying for the future. We're paying for where it is and what it's done and where it is right now. As I've said already, worth repeating, your job is to not find the perfect business. Your job is to find a business that you can make great. And I think it is worth repeating, because I was with a private client the other day and the penny dropped on this, because he hadn't realized that he was saying no to some great businesses to buy because he kept looking for this absolutely perfect, ideal business, and he hadn't found it. A question to ask yourself when you're looking at a business to buy is, what are the skills necessary to make this business a success, and who is going to provide them? So, for example, in my sector, having someone with day-to-day managerial skills on site is a key to its success. So if we can find great managers, then the business is therefore going to be successful as a result of that. I also ask myself this question: what could kill this business? How could this business go terribly wrong? What are the risks? Now, I think coronavirus might be added to this list, but hopefully this is a temporary situation. It may well have killed the business to date, but if you take away a pandemic, is it going to be a good business in the future? That's the question you should be asking yourself. And I think you should be falling in love with the profit potential, not the business itself. I see people falling. It's like when people go and buy property as an investor for the first time, they often buy the wrong type of property because they fall in love with how beautiful it looks in the sunshine, or they fall in love with the decoration of the property. That's the wrong reasons for buying a property. So don't fall in love with a business just because you like the location of their office, or the staff all seem friendly. I mean, that's not a good reason. Does the business make a profit, and can it make more profit under your ownership? I would suggest that you avoid partners. I hear too many times, I answer way too many questions, clients, about I'm going to cut this person in at 10% and this person at 20%. It's just unnecessary. You can buy skills in. You don't need to reward someone with a chunk of your business. Now, let's say that you choose to ignore me. Some people have been known to. Then you need a solid shareholders agreement. It will cost you at least £2,000 by a proper corporate lawyer to do this. You don't want like your local person above a shop. You want a proper law firm to do this for you. I always avoid startups because it's interesting how owners of startups they've watched far too much Dragon's Den, and they think their business is worth a fortune, even though they haven't got any customers. So you want a business that's been operating for at least 5 years. I was asked this question before we started the webinar today about franchises. Avoid franchises, because franchises, they're kind of a business, I suppose, but it's really a halfway house between someone having a job and having a business. You buy a franchise. Well, you can't change the website, you can't change the name, you can't change the pricing, you can't change the location. You're not in control. So don't go anywhere near franchises. And there's a typo in there. I always put in a few typos just to keep everyone alert, okay? Because I know people love emailing me about typos, and I never want to disappoint those people, okay? So spread your risk and buy more than one business. So you get one under your belt and then look for the second one as quickly as possible. Everyone that I work with on a more one-to-one sort of basis and in other programs, we want to do one, we want to do two, we want to do three. Because not only do you get better at deal making, you are spreading your risk in case one goes a little bit wobbly. A pandemic might come along, who knows? But then you've got other businesses that are there to support you. So let me tell you what I describe as the star deal. So the star deal, what is the star deal? The star deal has 5 different elements to it. And you found a star deal when you hit all 5 of these elements. The first is motivation. You want a motivated seller. I cannot emphasize this enough. You'll hear me say it numerous times throughout the course of the week. You need someone who is motivated to sell to you. If you have a demotivated seller, then the deal won't be done or you'll overpay. You want someone who is superbly motivated to sell you their business. And I really, if I could reach through your laptop or your phone screen to wave at you, I would be saying it's got to be a motivated seller. I mean, you could take everything away, but if you haven't got motivated seller and still do a deal, but if you take away motivated seller, you've got yourself a big problem, a big problem. I want a sensible valuation on the business from our motivated seller. We'll talk more about this tomorrow, but a sensible valuation. You don't want some crazy, they want millions of pounds for this little tiny business that's never made a profit. I also look for a business with potential. I don't actually like businesses where the owner has done everything with it. When they proudly tell me that they're at 95% capacity and they can't grow anymore and there's nothing left to do, I think, why would I buy it then? The only reason I would ever buy it is for the cash that it generates, but I like to be able to uplift the value. I'm looking for a deal structure that works for me. In other words, I want to buy a business in a way that suits me. And you might think, well, Jonathan, that isn't exactly a win-win. Well, I'm not saying it doesn't work for the other side, but primarily it's got to work for me. Because if it doesn't work for me, it's not much point it working for the other side, is it? So I want a deal structure that works for me. So the one that we are hopefully completing on today, for example, is rather unusual. It's rather unusual. Well, I say it's unusual. We've got others like this, but I think you all find it rather unusual, I should say, is because you might think, well, okay, on completion, money is going to be sent to the owners. Actually, it's not. Money is going to be sent to us. Yep, you heard me right. So on the completion of this purchase today, the other side are sending us money. Crazy, but true. Now that's a deal structure that I like, and I'll explain that to you. I think that's either Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll go through that, okay? So I like that deal structure. Motivated seller, sensible valuation, business has got potential. We've got a structure that I like. And then simplicity. I want simplicity. As soon as I hear someone, as soon as I get a message from someone saying, okay, so there are 5 owners, one's in Dubai, one's in Singapore, this owner wants to retire, this owner is the son-in-law of this owner. Oh my goodness, that sounds like a nightmare to me. Now, I'll keep it like a back burner deal. If it happens, it happens, but I won't put too much effort into it. There's just so much that could go wrong with this. So these are the reasons for selling that typically come up, and you will hear again and again and again. You've got to remember that every business is for sale. Whether you want to buy it, it's a different matter. People talk about financial freedom. They've got, and I put that in inverted commas because when someone talks about financial freedom, you might think that's going to be millions of pounds because it is for you. Well, for many people, it isn't. It's just enough to, I don't know, buy a new car in some cases, or in fact, actually, some of the amounts that we've been doing, paying for businesses recently, it really is no more than buy a new car. They've got another business that they're focusing on. They want to get off the treadmill of running the business, turning up to the office every day. Because don't forget, they're doers rather than deal makers. Deal makers buy businesses off of doers. It's become too stressful. There's financial pressure on them. Quite often, unfortunately, health is a big factor. Family reasons, retirement. I would actually say number 1 on the list is always going to be retirement. And there's another little typo just to keep you on your toes. It's funny, you don't see it when you're setting up the PowerPoint slides. You only see it when you are presenting them. And of course, pandemic is the big reason. The reason we've done 10 deals since the start of lockdown is because of the pandemic and the talk about recession. And those people probably were going to retire anyway. Maybe 8 of them were going to retire anyway. We've just accelerated the process. That's why you need to understand the pressure points. Why are they selling? Why are they selling? Because that will help you get a better deal. And when we talk about negotiation tomorrow, you'll see exactly what I mean. I want to talk you through the process for buying a business to give you an overview of the whole thing. And I'm told that this is very useful because once you see an overview of the process, you can kind of realize where you are in the structure. So first of all, we want a target. You know what? Sorry, I just realized that I messed this up. So let me just open it all up here. And we're going to work down the left-hand side of the screen, okay? So the target list is the people who we are going to approach about buying their business. We're going to make contact with those targets. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Then we're going to receive inbound contact. So our phone is going to ring and our email is going to ping with people who are interested in selling us their business. We're then going to have a telephone call with them. And then we're going to get an NDA signed, a non-disclosure agreement. And then we're going to have a meeting. Now, ideally, that meeting is face-to-face. It's okay. You can do that on Zoom as well. We're going to review some documents they're going to send us. I'll tell you which documents they need to send later. And then we're going to have a second meeting. Now, the second meeting is typically on site at the premises of the business that we're buying. And right there and then, while we're sitting with them, we're going to construct the deal. We're going to put the deal together at that point, because up to that point, we don't really know what we're working with. HOTS is heads of terms. So heads of terms is our preliminary agreement. I will teach you this week how to present heads of terms, how to get it signed. People often make a meal out of this unless they know how to do it properly. I'll teach you how to do it properly, okay? So we do heads of terms, and then we start the due diligence and the legal process that runs side by side. Often during this due diligence and legal process, we renegotiate the price simply because we now have a better understanding. Up to this point, we've kind of taken a lot of what the seller says at face value. At this point, we're going to renegotiate it. Now, let me just give you a couple of tips that I want to go into more detail later in the week, but I just want to start your thinking process now. Everyone worries about putting the correct price for the business in their heads of terms because they feel they don't know enough about the business. Well, I'm going to show you how to deal with that situation, because you know what? The price can change. So whatever price you put in the heads of terms and say, this is what we're going to buy the business for, give it a couple of weeks and that price could be very, very different. I have rarely seen a heads of terms turn into a completion sale and purchase agreement for the business, and it's the same, because the deal change is, I tell you what it's like. Again, it's like putting in an offer to buy a house, although I'll teach you this week, we do not put in offers, by the way, but I use the house analogy because everyone's familiar with it. We put in an offer to buy a house, and then the surveyor comes out and looks up on the roof, sticks his head in the loft, looks down at the basement, writes a report, and you go back and you renegotiate the price of the house because now you've got the report from the surveyor. Well, that's exactly what due diligence does. It allows you to go back and say, look, these things aren't what we thought they were, and therefore the price is renegotiated as a result. That's the renegotiate price. We then complete on the deal. And then here is the thing. We do post-completion adjustments. Now, this is a really, really smart move. Most people forget it because they just think up to the completion point. They don't think beyond. So we do post-completion adjustments that allow us to adjust the price that we are paying for the business based upon our experience now that we are owners of the business. Now, this is massively missed by people. They just don't recognize that this is possible. What I'm going to show you this week is how to buy a business without the risk of overpaying for the business. No risk of overpaying paying for the business, okay? And that should set your mind at ease that you might get sort of hoodwinked into overpaying or paying the wrong price. So we'll cover that. We'll cover that later. Okay, so let's talk about finding deals. So we talked a little bit about how to get the focus and I guess if I was to, I'm not going to give you homework, but if I was to give you homework, the homework would be for you to put your thinking caps on this evening and say, okay, what sort of businesses could I buy? Yeah, and start to formulate a plan. And remember, the best way to do a plan is to start off with the exit in mind. What would be a meaningful amount of money? And it might be £1 million. I mean, if you're going to pick any number, just pick a round number like £1 million. £1 million might be a meaningful amount of money, okay? And then you just work backwards to how do I get to that point? Now, we now need to go and find some deals in the type of businesses that we've decided we're going to buy. Oh, sorry. Let me just give you another little tip on the finding on the types of businesses. If you can't decide between 2 or 3 different sectors, then do some deal sourcing in those 2 or 3 different sectors. Because if you do that, then surprise, surprise, after you've had conversations with half a dozen owners in each sector, you might discover where the opportunity is that you never would have known sitting at home guessing. Okay, so you don't have to make one do or die decision. The great thing about this is that you can change direction if you need to. So I've had a private client start off on lettings agents, then go to marquee hire companies. Oh no, she had recruitment in the middle. Letting agents, recruitment, marquee hire companies, and then we are now on the 4th one where she's really hitting the mark with a completely different sector that I can't for the life of me remember, but it was completely different, okay? So 10 places to find deals. Word of mouth. So just talking to people, saying I'm interested in buying a business. You'll be quite surprised how many people say, oh, you should talk to someone that I know because they were complaining the other day about how they hated their business and how they'd sell it if they could. By the way, just because someone hates their business does not mean that it's a bad business. Yeah, people hate their. I had a business a few years ago that I absolutely got to the point of detesting. I couldn't stand it. I could not stand it. I sold it for £7 million. It didn't mean that it was a bad business. It meant that I had just reached the end of my road with that business. Accountants. So I would be saying to your accountant, if you have one, I'm interested in buying a business. Yeah, let me know if you hear of anyone. I mean, the subtext of that is, do you have any clients? Of course, your client accountant isn't going to tell you if they have any clients interested in selling, but you need to be on their radar. Websites. There are websites with thousands of businesses for sale. The challenge with those is that most of those businesses for sale are actually listed by brokers, and we don't want to go through brokers. We'll talk more about that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. LinkedIn. I see people do this terribly, by the way. They put terrible adverts on LinkedIn saying, if you own a business that's sort of been suffering from, recently and you want to sell it, please contact me. I mean, it's so generic. There is a smarter way of using LinkedIn. Let me tell you what it is. Let's say you're interested in buying a dental practice. And what I would be doing if I was you, I would be setting up a LinkedIn profile. You may have to sort of ditch your existing one, but I'd be setting up a new, because you're only meant to have one LinkedIn profile. I'd be setting up a LinkedIn profile that says, I'm interested in acquiring businesses in the dental sector. And then I would be connecting with the owners of dental practices. You just find them by searching. I mean, it's just a search function on LinkedIn. And then obviously a lot of people are going to accept those invitations. Most people accept without even thinking about it. And let's say you've got 100 dental practices on there, then you put a post on every single day on LinkedIn about how you're looking for dental practices and why you're looking for dental practices and about a dental practice that you met and how you can help them retire and all these things. So you use LinkedIn a little bit more smartly than just blanket bombing posts like some people do. Now, in a different world, we would be going to events, conferences, and trade shows in that particular sector. However, this is all going to come back. Business brokers, I've got to put them in there because someone's always going to say to me, Jonathan, that's where the deals are. Well, yes and no. That's where the bad deals are, but we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then you've heard me talk about sending out letters, and the letter template that we provide you with is a very good template. It doesn't have to be copied wholesale. In fact, I'd prefer it if you didn't copy it wholesale, simply because it's my language, not yours. My way of wording things, not yours. And I think it'd be better if you reworded it in your own way of speaking. But number 7, definitely sending out letters is right there in at number 7. Now, this is interesting. It's actually there at number 8, and it's there at number 9, and it's there at number 10. Yes, because letters is the way forward. If you were to ditch all the other things, I mean, word of mouth, I get a little bit of that, but it's not because I'm particularly out there talking to people. I'm not that sociable. I never go on websites. I don't go to events and conferences and trade shows. I don't really use LinkedIn for this purpose. And I certainly don't like going to business brokers. So letters are the way forward. You can generate all the deals you could ever possibly want by sending letters. You really can. Now, remember how important deal flow is? You don't know a good business from a bad business without deal flow. Well, letters give you the options. And people say, Jonathan, how do you find such good deals? And we've had some goodies recently. Why? Because it's not the only business that we look at. We have to look at a lot of businesses to find the business that fits the criteria of what we're looking for, but also is a good deal. So you can find better deals if you look at more businesses. The only way to look at more businesses is to get more businesses to contact you. So let's go into a little bit of detail around this. Let me get this out of the way. As much as I don't like talking about them, I have to mention how business brokers work because I think you have a right to know. They get paid to advertise the business. So they get paid to advertise the business, typically between £2,000 and it can be more than £25,000. It really depends. And then they're paid to sell the business, which could be 2 to 8% of the sale price of the business. They do receive a lot of inquiries. So business brokers get an awful lot of inquiries from people interested in buying a business. And I think it's fair to say a lot of those inquiries are going to be complete time wasters. So they need to filter out the time wasters. And I get it from their perspective. There's nothing worse in any business about being faced with hundreds of time wasters every week. And some of the large brokers would be getting hundreds and hundreds of contacts a week. So they need to filter out the time wasters. The assumption that they make is that you are a time waster because there are so many of them. They just assume everyone is a time waster. So you need to prove otherwise. If this is the path that you wish to go down, don't recommend it is, but if this is the path you want to go down. Now, the disadvantages of business brokers is that they play buyers against each other. A little bit like estate agents. You know how you go and view a property and the estate agent says, you're the third person today. And you think, okay, that's interesting. It brings out that competitive spirit, doesn't it? And when they say, well, you need to put in an offer because I think the other people are putting in an offer, you think, oh my goodness, I really want this house. And that's what business brokers do to you. They play buyers off against each other. They are professional sellers of businesses. And quite frankly, I'll say this straight. The chances of you being able to match their professionalism right off the bat are quite slim. Give it a few months of this and you'll be absolutely fine. but would you be able, would you be able to negotiate against a professional seller sort of so early on? Well, maybe not. It's up for you to decide whether that you feel you're going to be okay with doing that. But I would personally, I would prefer you to be negotiating with the owner of a business who is not a professional seller, simply because, I mean, it's a little bit like playing poker for the first time. You've never played poker ever before. You know how it works, but you never played it, okay? And you sit down at a table with 5 professional poker players. Well, who's going to be the loser? It's going to be you, because you never played poker before. It's exactly the same. You go into a den of professional sellers, who's going to come out the loser? Probably the person who's still learning the ropes. And they want to vet the buyer, and they want to check up on who you are, and they want to find out you've got some money and all of these things. Now, if you go straight to the owners of the businesses, you don't have any of that hassle. Now, there are advantages. I have to show a balanced viewpoint, okay? There are advantages. They have prepared all the information you need to decide whether this is a business that you want to buy. So they've kind of done some of the legwork for you. Owners by themselves are not going to have done that. They can put pressure on the seller. They can say, come on, you need to make up your mind on this, or you need to they chase the seller. I mean, I spend a lot of my time chasing the sellers for information. They'll do that for you. And they help the seller know their numbers. And quite often when you deal with the owners of businesses, they don't know very simple numbers. You may have seen some of my YouTube videos about this. They don't know very simple numbers. The broker does actually take that factor out of the equation, so we can help speed up the process to some degree. The broker process is very simple. They will want you to complete a questionnaire. This is part of their filtering process, because a lot of people won't even complete the questionnaire. So they figure that someone who spends 15, 20 minutes filling out a questionnaire is more likely to be a buyer than someone who isn't. They'll want you to sign a non-disclosure, nothing wrong with that. Then they'll want to see POF. POF is proof of funds. They want to see that you can afford the business. Now, this is where it goes horribly wrong. Your temptation, if you do have some money and you want to fund a business by using your own cash, then you might be tempted to send over a bank statement or something like that. I mean, goodness me, that's like playing that poker game that we talked about and showing everyone around the table what your cards are. You're definitely going to lose now. As soon as they know that you've got the money, they'll make sure that you spend it. They may and probably will prevent you from meeting the seller. They say, well, the reason that we've been engaged is because the seller's very busy and we are going to deal with the transaction. Now, that means you lose all of your negotiating edge. In fact, actually, the more I talk about this out loud, the more dreadful it sounds. They will want you to put in an offer. Now, we'll talk about this tomorrow. You will never put in an offer. Work with me, guys, and you will never, ever put in an offer. It is the downfall of a deal from your perspective. They will then reject the offer. Whatever it is, they're going to reject it. They're going to say no. Oh my goodness, we're in a terrible negotiating position. And Chinese whispers, not the most reliable industry. And what you say to the broker won't be passed on to the owner, and vice versa. So it just gets confusing. Look, cut through all of this nonsense. Just speak to the owner directly. Avoid the brokers, because it is just not worth it. Now, let's say they ask you for that proof of funds. Remember POF, proof of funds? How do you deal with that? Well, I'm going to give you 3 ways of dealing with it, okay? The third is the best way of dealing with it. But if you're going to ignore all of my advice and you're going to do all this with brokers anyway, I'll tell you how you deal with the proof of funds. First, you bring it up first. Yeah, you say, I'm sure you get a lot of time wasters, so I want to establish that I'm someone who can follow through on this transaction, not afford it, not pay for it, someone who can follow through on this transaction. So I'm going to send you a letter from my bank, my accountant, or my finance broker to show that I'm ready to go. Okay, so we're not sending bank statements. We're just saying that and the accountant, Mr. J is in a position to complete on an acquisition of this size. So that's kind of fluffy wording, but it typically does the trick. But number 3 is really the third way of dealing with it, is the best way, is that you have authority and confidence. If you have authority and if you have confidence, then you won't be asked in the first place, because you won't come across as an amateur. Now, some of you will be able to walk straight in there with that authority and confidence. I would think the majority, the vast majority, you want to build that authority and confidence over time. It doesn't necessarily come overnight. This week will help you though, okay? So that's how we deal with the proof of funds questions. Okay, let's get on to how to source deals using these letters. Why do we do it? Well, 3 reasons. It's fast, it's predictable, and it's scalable. So it's fast because I can get a letter out the door next week. If I'm doing a small quantity, we could get a letter out the door tomorrow. We'll talk about quantity in a moment. It's predictable. So I know that if I send out letters today, there will be phone calls to tomorrow or the next day. It happens quickly. I know that there will be calls, okay? And then scalable, number 3, scalable, is that I can do this at volume. Can I just give you a tip? Now, the people that I work with long-term, because let's face it, not everyone gets around to doing letters like immediately or next week. You know, people can put it off for a couple of months. Life gets in the way or whatever it might be. But when they get around to do it, they make a mistake at number 3. They send out 100 letters and wonder why they've only had 1 phone call or no phone calls. Well, you sent out 100. Now, let's put this into an analogy, because I want to make this point so clearly. Let's say you own a pizza shop and you sell pizzas, and you figure it's a good idea to put leaflets through people's doors. Well, it is a good idea. And you get 100 leaflets printed, and you send someone out on their bike to put leaflets through doors, and they get to probably to the end of the street and they run out of leaflets. And you go, no, that's fine. That's fine. And you sit there waiting to make pizzas from people who phone you from the leaflets, and no one phones you. Well, if you were a business consultant and you were hired to solve this problem for the pizza company, what would you say? You would say, you're not sending out enough leaflets. You need to send leaflets to all the houses in the neighborhood, like thousands and thousands and thousands of houses, because out of 100 houses, how many people want a pizza the day the leaflet arrives through the door? Not everyone's going to put it on the fridge magnet. Not everyone's going to put it in the drawer in the kitchen. A lot's going to be thrown away with the other stuff that comes through the post. So 100 doesn't make sense. You've got to put out 5,000 or 10,000 for it to make sense. It's the same with this. You send out 100 letters, it won't happen. You send out several hundred, send out 1,000, it will start to happen. Now, I've got 2 types of clients. I've got clients who want to buy one business, in which case you might not want to need to do this at such scale. And I've got clients who are going full on, and they want to build a group, and they want to sell it for millions. If you want to sell something for millions, you've got to send out a lot of letters to find the businesses to buy. It is a numbers game. I'd like it to be more scientific than that, but it is a numbers game. So you've got to scale it up. So we've got about 2,500 letters arriving this week. And then we're going to be doing a similar number every single week, okay? So, yeah, just to put it into perspective. But hey, the prize is worth it. The prize is so big, we've got to do it. So let's just go through what the letter is. I've given you a template. I've given you 2 templates. The preferred template is the shorter one, is the single page one. But please remember that you should personalize it so that it doesn't look identical to mine. And I would respectfully ask you to do that, simply because, on one of those letters, it says, I sold a group of companies last year. That's my story. That's me. Okay. And someone used the template word for word and then contacted us and said, what do I say when they ask me about the group of companies that I sold? And I said, because I didn't twig at first, I said, well, you just tell them. And he said, but I didn't sell the group of companies. I said, well, why did you put it in the letter? Why did you've got to tell the truth? Okay. So, you've got to be conscious of the fact that it needs to reflect you. Personalize it. Do you use plain paper or do you use headed paper? Okay, this is sometimes a big debate in people's minds. You know what? The first letters we sent out to build the group, that we're building, were just on plain pieces of photocopier paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. We use a letterhead now because we're now established in the market, but at the beginning, we just used a plain paper. Who is it from? Well, sometimes people say, I don't want to put my name on the letter because and it could be a number of reasons. I'm employed by someone and I don't want anyone to know. You know what? You can use a pseudonym. It's not such a big deal. You can become someone else for the benefit of the letter. And then when they phone up wanting to speak to Rupert, you say, Rupert's unavailable at the moment. I'm Jonathan. How can I help you? It's just so straightforward. It's not one of those things. People get in their own way with this sort of thing. I'm trying to unblock a blockage before the blockage is even blocked. Okay. How does someone respond? Two methods of response. One, and I'm doing questions later. Okay. So how does someone respond? One is a phone number. And I would suggest a mobile. And two is email. Give people two methods of responding. And don't get hung up on, I got a 2% response. I got a 3% response. Oh, well, I got a 6% response. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I never work it out. I never count. It doesn't bother me. Why? Because I want to buy businesses. I'm not interested in how many people phone me. I mean, it really doesn't matter. So I'm telling you this so you don't get hung up on the wrong things. I see people get hung up on the wrong things, and I don't want you to too. Now we need to get that letter out the door, don't we? Do you put a stamp on it or do you put it through the office franking machine? I say put a stamp on it. Put a stamp on it because it personalizes it. The more personal it is, the better. Do you use white envelopes? Do you? I'm answering these because these are the questions that people ask me. Do I use white envelopes or brown envelopes? Well, in the UK, if you get a brown envelope through the post, the only people it can be from is from HMRC and the tax office, in other words. So I'd use a nice white envelope. Do I need to handwrite the envelope or do I print it? Well, you're probably going to print it because the chances of you handwriting thousands of letters are very slim. And again, I wouldn't get hung up on these things. These things are details that make no difference. Quantity. How many do I send? Well, this is the thing. The more you send, the more successful you're going to be. There you go. As blunt as that. If you don't send any, nothing's going to happen. You send a couple of hundred, bit half-hearted, right? You start getting into some serious numbers, not all in the same, it doesn't have to be in the same day. You can spread it over a period of weeks and months. You can send them always out on Monday mornings. I mean, whatever. You're going to get the best results. There is no doubt about it. My most successful private clients have a little routine going. Letters are going out every single week, every single month, month after month, because they're looking for businesses to buy. And quite frankly, if the outcome is to make millions of pounds, you can fork out a few quid for stamps. Okay, I mean it doesn't make sense to think that you're going to make millions of pounds without doing something like putting letters in envelopes. Do not use a bulk mailing service like Doc Mail. Why? Because the letters come out looking rubbish, absolute rubbish. It will look like junk mail. So do not feel that's a shortcut that will save you time and money. It will not. If all your letters go in the bin, you will not get a single response, okay? So how do we handle the responses? Well, the phone calls need to be taken when you are in a position to take them and you're not distracted by something else. I mean, and that almost sounds like a little obvious, almost too obvious to mention. But I see people, well, I hear of people who take calls when they've just pulled over into a lay-by to answer the phone, and they're balancing, they're trying to write on the back of a scrap of paper they found in the car with a pen that doesn't work properly. No, call them back. You need to be in control of this conversation. You need to be the boss of this conversation. You cannot do this if you're all over the place. Make a record of everyone who phones you and the outcome and what they said in terms of the key facts. Why? You might think you're going to remember. You do 6 of these, you won't have a clue what the first one was. You will lose track almost immediately. Therefore, you need to keep a record of the calls. And you can just keep it as a paper file. You could put it in a spreadsheet. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but it's about keeping a record of the calls. We use a function, an app rather, called Circle Loop. Now, Circle Loop is just an app that you download onto your phone, and it allocates you either a landline or a mobile number you choose when you set up the account. And this is the number that we put on letters. So when the Circle Loop app rings on your phone, it rings because it's someone from the letters, okay? So that means it keeps it separate from your friends and family. So you know that it's someone from a letter phoning you, so you can kind of go into the quiet room, get your pad out or whatever it might be. This initial call is probably no more than 20 minutes. As soon as it gets into like the 25, 30 minutes and upwards, it probably is starting to become a little too long. And this initial call is a fact find. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you exactly what to say on this call. Now, when I've taught you how to do this call and you've done it a couple of dozen times and you're really good at it, then you can teach it to someone else and you can use a virtual assistant to do this first call. Now, think about this. You're all busy because everyone's busy. You can use a virtual assistant for sending out the letters and a virtual assistant for receiving the phone calls. But you need to teach them what to do. Therefore, you need to know what to do. Therefore, you need to learn from me this week and tomorrow in particular, how to do it. But that's how we handle the responses. So tomorrow, I'm going to go into a lot of detail around that first call and how you deal with that and how you handle that, okay? Now, I mentioned a couple of times earlier about starting with the end in mind. I want to teach you a fairly advanced strategy now. I'm not going to save it till the end of the week. I'm going to teach this to you now because I want you to see what is at stake and how, if you get this right, if you become great students of mine this week, then you have got the power of the knowledge and the confidence to do something very, very special indeed. It's called the buy and build strategy. Sometimes in the United States, they call it a roll up, but I prefer buy and build, but I mean, it's entirely up to you. So this is the example with round numbers. Now I'm going to rattle through this and you might well, on a couple of occasions think, oh my goodness, I didn't quite catch that. Well, that's what the recording of this video is for. And also I might go through it again in a different way later in the week once you've absorbed some more knowledge, because it will become a lot more real for you again later in the week. So in this example, there are going to be 5 businesses in our buy and build strategy. Business 1 makes a £100,000 profit and the value is 3x. Whenever you see 3x, we take the number in front of the x and we multiply the profit by the number in front of the x, so 3x. It's a business that we're going to buy for £300,000. Now, we haven't talked at all yet about deal structures and funding. I don't expect you to follow this entirely. If you do, that's a bonus, but it doesn't matter if you don't, because don't worry, you'll understand this by the end of the week. I just want you to look at the principle that I'm teaching you, because I want you to get excited about the possibilities. Business 2 is exactly the same, £100,000 profit, and so is business 3, business 4, and business 5. So we've got 5 businesses making about 100,000 profits on average each, and the value of these businesses is quite low. A 3x multiple is actually quite a low valuation for buying a business. That is actually quite low. It's typically for smaller businesses like the ones we've got in this example. So the total purchase price is 1.5 million. Which means that over time, these 300,000, you're not going to buy them all on the same day. This might be over like a 12, 18 month period. I mean, you can easily do this in 12 months if you've got a process to follow. So 300,000, 3 times, that's where we get our 1.5 from. Total profit is 500,000. Remember, they're making £100,000 profit each. And the total cash required on completion is £250,000. So what we're doing is we're buying these businesses with initial consideration of 50,000 each on average, which gives us a £250,000 initial consideration. Now, don't worry about how we get the 250. We'll cover this during the week. You do not have to have, by the way, £250,000 in order to follow this example. So just relax on that one, okay? We'll talk about this later in the week when it becomes more relevant. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to take those 5 businesses and we're going to squash them all together. We're going to consolidate them. And as a result of consolidating those businesses, we're going to add 40% more profit to each company. So overall to the group, 40% more profit. And how do we do this? We do this in 2 ways. We're going to increase sales, which to be fair is probably the harder part of this equation. And we're going to decrease costs because those 5 businesses may no longer need 5 separate offices. They might all be able to operate from 1 office. Do you see what I mean? So we cost cut. We don't cost cut in a way that jeopardizes the business, but we cost cut because we want to, we don't need 5 offices, we don't need 5 receptionists, we don't need 5 accountancy firms, we don't need 5 HR people and so forth. So that's what we're going to do. And it's going to take us a few months to do that. Probably not as long as you might think though. Now our total profit is now 700,000. How come? Well, we started off with 500,000 when we bought them. We've added 40% profit. We've now got £700,000 of profit. Now, remember we bought these businesses at 3 times profit because they're small businesses. We've now got a large business making 700,000 profit. It's now worth more. And the profit multiple that we would apply to an exit is now 6. We can now sell this business for 6 times the profit, 6 times the profit, which means that we could exit this group at 4.2 million. Right, now we're starting to get exciting. We're starting to see some big numbers, but let's look at a couple of clever things that we can do here. The deferred consideration is actually 1.25 million. Now, how do we get to 1.25 million? Now, that's what we're buying them for. We're buying them for 1.5. We're putting 250,000 down. So what's left? 1.25. So we're going to defer into the future payments of 1.25 million. All right. Now, what does Jonathan mean then by reducing the deferred consideration by 30%? You use a strategy that will serve you very well. You go, after you've bought these businesses, you leave it a few months, and then you go to each of the owners and you say this magic sentence. You say, I've come into some money. Now, you don't say that you've gone to a bank. You say, I've come into some money. You don't explain it any further, but the initial thought that goes through most people's minds is inheritance, or he's won the lottery, okay? I've come into some money and I'm able to pay that deferred consideration element now, like today, their eyes light up because they're going to get some money to take home with them to their partner in time for tea. Okay. So, but in return for paying it today, there needs to be an incentive for me. And therefore we need to discount what is paid. The average discount that you will get is 30%. So we could go around with our checkbooks to each of those 5 previous owners, and we could reduce the deferred consideration by 30% on average to 875. But you might be saying, Jonathan, where do I get 875,000? Well, you go to the bank. So you go to the bank and you say, I bought these 5 businesses. We've got 1.25 million of deferred over the next, say, 3 years. We're paying it over the next 3 years. I would like to turn that into what's called a term loan, where we pay that 1.25 to you instead over 10 years. So we'd like to borrow the 1.25, pay it back to you over 10 years. This will allow us to free up our cash flow and build the businesses as a result. So you go and borrow the 1.25 million, but you pay these owners 875,000 because we've got ourselves a discount. This means that you can now take out that initial 250,000 plus some interest. And don't worry where that came from. We'll cover that tomorrow and the next day, okay? But we get the money that was put in back out, and there's £125,000 left over. Do you remember I said right back at the beginning of the webinar today about paying yourself a deal fee? Okay, well, there's a £125,000 deal fee for you. So let's see what we've got. After 12 months, we want to do this in the first year. No cash is left in. Why no cash left in? Because we've taken out the original 250 that was put in. So no cash left in. We've paid ourselves a deal fee of £125,000. And let's look at the cash flow during ownership. Now, the business was making, I've reduced the profit by 100,000. So it should be 700,000 minus the debt repayments on a 1.25 million facility over 10 years at 3.75%, it's 150,000 per annum. Instead of 450 profit, that she should say 550. So you're actually making £500,000 profit before tax. So you own these businesses, there's no money in, okay? And you're still making £500,000 profit after paying the loan. I mean, what is there not to like? So we haven't used any of our own money to buy it. We've got 5 businesses. They're making over £500,000 profit before tax and after we've paid back the loan. Now, remember, we could say we could sell this for 4.2 million because now we've got a higher multiple. We've got some debt after a year still of 1.10 to the bank. So we have to pay the bank back out of that. We're left with 3.1 million. So look at this. We're at least 12 months into this. It might take us 12 months to put the team together, put the group together, and then another 12 months to do the restructuring of the debt or the deferred consideration and then sell the business. But we come out of it after 24 months with 3.1 million. Now, I think that is a very good way for you to spend the next 24 months. It's 2 years. It will go by in a flash. Now, here's the thing. Some of you on the webinar today will be more ambitious than that. They say, I don't want to do 5 businesses, Jonathan. I'll do 10 businesses. And I don't want to do 10 businesses making 100,000 each. I want to do 10 businesses making £500,000 each. Can I do this on a larger scale? Well, here's the wonderful thing about buying businesses. You can be as ambitious as you want. There is nothing to limit you. There is nothing holding you back except yourself. Only yourself can hold you back on this. So what I'm going to do now, because I've been talking non-stop for an hour and 55 minutes, I'm going to go to some of the questions that are in the chat box and answer those questions. I'm going to do that for the next 15, 20 minutes because I like to make this opening session a really meaty one because I don't want you to sleep tonight. I want you to be so excited that you don't sleep. And then you're all back here raring to go at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And I'm going to answer some questions, and then that will be the end of the webinar. But I'm going to stay online to tell you about some of my advanced programs. But I don't want these webinars are not a sales pitch. So I'm going to do all my content, and then at the end of when you can go at that point if you would like to. But for those of you who have already been asking me about what can we do after this week has ended, I'll tell you all about that later, but it won't be part of the main webinar. It's going to be separate, because I want to keep it separate from the content, and I think you'll understand why that's a good thing. So let me go to the to the chat box, and let's look at what's up here. Now, some people were typing in messages like 2 hours ago, so maybe those questions have been answered. Oh, yes. Mark says, are the 10 places to find deals, connect to administrators are number 11. Yes, you're absolutely right. That could be number 11. I cover that on, I believe I cover that buying from administrators on Wednesday. I've got a deal to buy 3 businesses from administrators that is quite possibly happening this week while we're on the webinar. You mentioned not using bulk mail service companies. Oh, yeah, like Dotmail. This is Wasim. How does the virtual assistant send the letters, Jonathan? Well, they could do it, just put the letters in the envelopes. But if you're using large quantities, use something called a mailing house, okay? Tim says, great session, Jonathan. Thanks. I have a board meeting at 4 p.m. All right, okay. My question about today's session, I'd gladly see answered when I watch the video. I was right. So you're not here at or you're just about to duck out. What is your experience with sending emails? Right. You don't. So what is your experience with sending emails as opposed to letters? I want to buy a bunch of B2B software companies, and letters feel strange a bit. And I'm super interested in your private program. Okay. So, right. So let me ask this for you, Tim, as it sounds like you're ducking out in the next couple of minutes. So do not send emails. Do not send emails. You want to send letters. Emails, typically you have not got the personal email address of the owner of the business. You've only got the reception email address. You've got like the office at, the hello at. You haven't got a personal email address, okay? So your email is going to be intercepted by someone else, and it will be perceived as junk mail and deleted. What you want to be doing is you want to be sending items through the post marked private and confidential, and then it will be opened by the owner. No PA would dare open a letter marked private and confidential. Robert says, VA versus full-time employee fielding the calls. You don't need a full-time employee doing it. You don't, if I can afford it, should I get the employee? No, you don't need a full-time employee. You want someone that you can use for a busy couple of weeks here, and then not use them for a couple of weeks, and then go back again. You want that flexibility, Do I put ads in specialized newspapers? Yes, actually I do. In fact, I need to review that ad. Maria, remind me on that, because that needs refreshing. Carl Middleton says you said SEO companies generally sell for around 7 times earnings. Where can we find a list giving average markups for different businesses, vets, dentists? Well, there isn't a list. There is no such thing as a list. You just use Google search. So you just search for veterinary practice sold, and you'll find something buried in the trade press somewhere that will give you a bit of an indication. The other thing is you network, you talk to people, and you find out what businesses in that sector are selling for. So Russell, how do you work out and find the multiple of profit in the sector? I think actually that's really the same answer. That comes from Google search and talking to people, okay? Do I use high street banks and specialist lenders? Says Opta. Well, high street banks can be very, very slow. They're good to have as a backup. It's like a long burn. In the UK, many people are using business interruption loans to buy businesses. Tom says, as you mentioned, don't buy retail. Does that include e-commerce businesses? Now, e-commerce businesses are going through the roof, because no one's going to the high street. Well, less people are going to the high street now. They're going online. I mean, online businesses are hot. Absolutely. Very, very good. I don't think adverts in local papers probably are really effective. I think local papers are really a dying breed, unfortunately. Robert says, on average, how many phone calls with business owners before one deal? Well, it depends how good you are on the phone, and it depends how, well, it depends on a number of factors. I know everyone wants to give me, wants me to give them, you know, you have 10 conversations, you buy one business. It's the swings and roundabouts. You know, some days it feels like everyone you speak to has a business that is buyable, and other days it feels like no one has a business that's buyable. So again, it's a stat that you don't like what percentage return on the letters. You don't need to be measuring something like that, but it just comes back to as many as possible. Alan says, do you put a deposit down at the time of writing a heads of terms? Is it refundable? No, you don't. You'd pay. I'll talk about this when we come to the heads of terms section in a couple of days' time, but you'd pay £1 for the exclusivity. Craig says, do you keep the current employees? We'll cover what happens after you bought the business more at the end of the week, as it's a more logical place there. But typically you do want to keep the employees. That's part of what you're buying. Matt says, are brokers still bad? You mentioned in your recent podcast that brokers may not be such a bad thing now. Oh yeah, absolutely. What's your thought on brokers right now? Well, it depends upon the individual, depends upon the actual broker that you're talking to. They're so desperate to sell businesses because so few people are buying, that it looks sometimes like, or it feels sometimes like they're working on your behalf. It's like they're working for you, where in actual fact, they're being paid by the seller. They should be working for the seller, okay? Rather than you, the buyer. A couple of questions here. Where do you find the industry databases? Well, it can be from places like CreditSafe, Experian, DueDeal. There's lots of aggregators of company house data. I actually prefer to go to people who subscribe to magazines or are members of trade organizations because the data is cleaner. Nimitz says, can I talk about Google My Business and the steps to get the list of companies? Oh, I think I've just answered that. Yep, so that's okay. James Bennett, I think I've just answered your question there as well. How do you avoid companies that are too dependent on its owners? Well, that's usually when they've hardly got any staff and you take the owners out and there's really no one left. Can I just say though, it isn't always a problem, because if you're buying, let's say we used IT companies as an example earlier on. Let's say you're buying IT companies and you just want the IT company contracts, then quite frankly, if the owners leave on, exit on sale and you're left with 2 members of staff, which isn't really sustainable, then does it really matter? Because you're going to be absorbing those contracts into your other businesses. Neil says, when you go to the bank and ask for a term loan to pay over 10 years, will they want security on the loan? Yeah, it's quite typically the security is the business itself. The security is the business itself. We'll talk about personal guarantees later in the week, okay? Dominic says, I'm a native Polish living in native Pole living in Germany. I don't speak German yet to be able to negotiate. Well, that's going to be kind of tough then, right? But that's what the question is. Should I focus on the Polish market and commute for the on-site meeting? Well, yeah. I mean, you can't, if you don't speak the language, obviously you can't. It's going to be very difficult, isn't it? So you want to negotiate with someone in the language that you can speak. Yeah, without a doubt. Sue says, hi Sue, how to find out sector specific multipliers? Well, I think probably the best source is Google and just looking at the trade press. So for example, in my sector, there's an online magazine, website, I suppose, called Education Investor. I'm just a subscriber to Education Investor, and I know everything that's going on. What's a good source of letters? Endall, yeah, absolutely. Do I have special rates? No, I don't. But it's not massively expensive. Russell says it also seems for a hard to find a business owner who isn't involved in the day-to-day rather than just taking profits. Not entirely sure what the question is. Russell, ask that again. So it's a question At the moment, I'm not sure what the statement means. Eduardo says, please, Jonathan, I'm working on the acquisition of a restaurant that the owner spent $700,000 to fit out, turning 1 million a year, so no profit. I know exactly how to overcome the problem. How would you value the business? Well, I can't, based upon that small amount of information. If a business isn't profitable, then it's kind of it's really just about reaching a number that he's happy and you're happy with. I tell you what people always want to do. If they've spent 700,000, I doubt that they spent 700 in cash. They probably borrowed that money. So that in itself could be a little bit of a challenge, because the lender would have a charge over the business, and you can't sell a business without the charge holder's permission. Okay. Well, we'll cover that later. We'll cover that later in the week for you, Eduardo. Okay. Stan says, if you start with a buy and build without having a company. So let me just oh, I've lost it. Hang on, it disappeared off my screen for a moment. Okay, I might have to come back to that for you. Okay. Yeah, Badget, I think I've answered your question. Where can we source a letter? I've already done that. How much do you tailor each letter other than the names and addresses? Well, I don't. Not each letter is the same letter. Yep, Robert, I've already answered that question about the data. A lot of people asking me exactly the same question, which I think I've probably answered now. Apologies for missing that piece of information earlier. Russell says, it seems hard to find a business where the owner isn't too involved day to day rather than just managing it. How do you differentiate? Well, I've got no problem with the owner being involved. That's really not a problem. I don't actually have an issue with that, because, as we said, their involvement is probably what's holding the business back. So I don't actually have a problem with them being involved. I clearly don't want the business to collapse the moment they walk out the door. But then if I'm buying it for its contracts, it doesn't really make any difference to me, because I'll just be absorbing those contracts into my existing company. Paul McDermott, I believe Maria sent that to you. So just go back to your emails for that, please. Dylan, again, same answer. I believe Maria sent that to you. She can help you with that. If the letter is private and confidential, says Craig, how do you find the business owner's personal name? Isn't it time costly for sending thousands of letters? Well, I don't use their personal name. I address it to the directors. Nimitz says, if you remove yourself from the running of the company, how do you structurally change it? Closing office redundancies. We'll cover that later in the week, okay? Because that's more of a takeover type question. Stan says, if you start with buy and build without having a business at the moment, how many companies putting together as a minimum? Well, there isn't really a minimum. And buy and build can be 2 companies. Obviously more than one, but it really depends how ambitious you are. Okay. Richard says, about all the nurseries, how many nurseries have I spoken to? How many have completed? You know what, Richard? I've never counted, but I don't mind putting the effort in, because the reward is worth it. I don't mind, speaking to lots of people, because quite frankly, I can speak to them. I go for a 5-mile walk in the morning. I can speak to them while I'm on my walk. It's really no big difference. Robert says, what about buyers brokers? Someone representing me going out and getting me deals. Well, let me tell you what they're going to do. They're going to send out letters. They're going to take phone calls. They're going to do exactly what I'm teaching you to do. There's no point paying someone else, £1,000 a month to do what, and that's how much those brokers would charge you to find you a deal, when all they're doing is what I'm teaching you to do here. Okay. How do I train the virtual assistant on the calls? Well, you learn it from me, then you go out and do it. You build your experience until you're really good at it, and then you teach them how to do it. Okay. Right. I'm trying to vary the questions here. I've got quite a few questions, but I'm trying to vary them, and some of them are going to be more relevant later in the week. Do I have a call structure fact find? Yep, we do all the calls tomorrow. We do that tomorrow, okay? Robert says, what are your numbers? Sorry, Robert. I think you're typing in half questions and I'm not getting the whole that I'm not getting the whole question in one message, okay? Ed says, hi, Jonathan, out of interest, what do you believe are the strengths of the early years education sector? What are the strengths? Well, it's recurring revenue from, it's never going to go out of style, right? I think there's always going to be children. So that's the main reason. Brandon says, are there any industries that tend to lean more heavily to the roll-up strategy? Yes, industries where you can find cost savings as a result of the consolidation, okay? Nimit says, how do you get a deal team working for you without paying them? Well, you have to pay them. I don't think people will work for you for free. Is there a structure for paying on completion? Oh, sorry, I understand what you mean. Yes, absolutely. Well, it isn't really a structure. You just pay them on completion out of the business that you buy. But we'll be talking more about deal team later in the week. Dominic says, buy and build strategy. You mentioned in the book that it's good if the businesses complement one another. Absolutely, for the reasons that I said, you've got this consolidation, this value to the consolidation. Which is the best company for the core business for the platform? A profitable business. That's the best company as the platform investment, without a doubt. Sergio says, how do you deal with vendors asking your age? Well, no one asks my age. Oh, sorry, let me read the rest of the question to everyone. I'm 21 at the moment, although I run a 7-figure marriage coaching business and I've got plenty of marketing and sales experience. That's brilliant. How do you deal with the vendors getting concerned about me? Well, should they be concerned about you? It seems to me, Sergio, that it's a problem that you have is not a problem anyone else has. It's something that you're worried about, but no one else would be worried about it. I think if you come across as someone who sounds like they know what they're talking about, that really is an issue. It's more of a confidence figure. Can you repeat where you get the list of companies? Yeah, okay, here's the thing. I'll show you how to do it. You go into Google and you type in company databases for rent, or just company databases, and you'll find all those results will be what you are looking for, okay? Business interruption loans is ending on September the 30th. Is it too late to use that opportunity? No, because it's ending on September the 30th. You've got 9 days to get an application in. So you might want to move on that quite quickly. Thank you, Craig. Great content. How do I personalize the letter? I think probably I've answered that already. I don't really personalize the letter to each individual. I personalize it for my story and my approach, but I don't personalize it if I send out 1,000 letters, it's not 1,000 different letters, okay? It's the same letter to everyone. How do you work out what sort of multiple to use, says Chris? Well, that's the industry research. Opta, I've just answered that question there. Should I pass companies that too many shareholders, says Dylan? Remember what I said earlier about simplicity? As soon as I see 5 owners, it starts to make me think this is going to be terrible. Paul Edwards, can I answer the deal team questions when we get to deal team later in the week? Otherwise, I'll be saying the same things twice. I'll just cover that at its most logical place. Do you send the letters to the same businesses week after week? No, not week after week. No, that's a bit. You'd look like a stalker if you did that. How many times do you aim to send letters to the same businesses? I think once a month is absolutely fine. If you go for a larger company, how do you establish credibility? Will the letters be enough? Well, the letters are just door openers. They're just to get the phone to ring, and then it's what you say on the phone. But we're covering that tomorrow. Jordan, I think I've answered your question already. Marcel says, any owner would identify us as newbies. Would they, Marcel? I mean, that's quite a big assumption, isn't it? I think you've lost the psychological game on that one already. If you believe that to be the case, you think it will put them off and make a negotiation hard. No, not at all. I'm going to show you as a result of this program how to have confidence and how to have credibility, okay? So don't already think it's going to be difficult when you don't know that yet. Sean says, if I wanted to target training companies, where would I find a database of companies to send letters to? Well, if you look at the training company publications, that's a good start. The industry bodies, that's a great start. Company house data, great start. James says, what about scrapping? I don't know. What about scrapping, James? I've got no, is that a good sector? Do you mean recycling, scrap metal? I don't know. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm starting to see how this works. Brilliant. See, thanks, Russell. So we're starting to see how the process works, right? So we're starting to see how this works. Now, let me just see if there's any more questions that are relevant. Or do I think nightclubs are an opportunity? Well, I guess no one wants to be in the nightclub business right now. Look, my answer to all of these is always going to be the same. It's going to be, is the business profitable? Is there a profitable business in there? I mean, I can't know every sector, can I? There are 4,000 different types of businesses. I can't know all of them. But what I can know is a principle. The principle is, can the business make money? What do I mean by contracts, says Dominic? What do I mean by contracts? Well, like, for example, like an IT contract to provide IT services to a company for the next 12 months. So contracts like that. Am I thinking training, bookkeeping, other business support services? Yep, all good businesses. They don't go out of fashion, do they? Did you say, says Joseph, you don't address letters with a personal name, but address to the director? Well, I do if I have the name. If I don't have the name, then I have to default to just the director. Johnny Lovett, I think I've already answered that question by asking someone else. Chris says, just making sure we're covering the financial stages again. Yeah, we haven't even done it yet. That comes later. That comes later in the week. No problem at all. With your own acquisitions, are you ever putting down consideration cash on completion? It depends. I mean, for example, the one that we're hopefully completing on today, just looking to see if I've got the WhatsApp message. I haven't, unfortunately. It looks like it's going to be tomorrow now. They're actually paying us. I'll explain more about that when we come to deal structures. Do I segment the target sectors to the size one feels comfortable starting this program with? Here's the thing. If you start limiting yourself right early on and say, I'm only going to look at very small businesses, you're going to miss some incredible opportunities. So, but this is about confidence and self-belief. And part of this week, I'm going to build your confidence and your self-belief, okay? Sorry, Marcel, you're sending me half a question on one message, half a question on another, and then other people's are kind of in the middle, okay? So, all righty, we're getting some questions. I'm not entirely sure if I'm getting all the question here. So Sean, your question sounds interesting. My core business, however, is business growth coaching. So where would I go first? Sorry, when you say where would I go first, you need to just explain to me what you mean by that. Right, okay. I think we're getting quite a lot of duplication on the questions here. Wasim says, is there a minimum number of staff for the nurseries that you're targeting? No, there isn't. For example, a net profit $200,000, do you then recommend a certain number of full-time staff? No, the staff and the revenue clearly have a degree of connection in that a business with no revenue probably has no staff. But I don't use a ratio. I don't ratio the two. And I've got one. What sort of industry should I look for as my strategy? My business coaching company is the first one. Well, sure. What I would do is use the process that we talked about at the beginning of this webinar. So because I can't, if you think about it from my perspective, I don't know you yet. I can't choose an industry for you. So you've got to use the process that I taught you earlier in order to devise a strategy that plays to things that you know about. I guess if you're a business coach, you know some businesses really, really well as a result of that. Okay, great. I've answered every single question. My board is clear. My board is completely empty. So this is going to be the end of today's webinar, but I'm going to stay online for 15 minutes to describe how, if you'd like to work with me, thank you, Dominic, thank you, Isaac, thank you for saying thank you, Craig. If you want to stay online with me for 15 minutes to find out how to work with me after the end of this week, after the end of this course this week, then I would be very happy to do that. But this is the end of the content. I said it was going to be 2 hours. If we've done 2 hours and 20 minutes, great webinar, Eduardo. Thank you very much. Wasim, thank you very much. When will you get the recording from today? Tomorrow. Great, great, great. Thanks very much, everyone. So if you'd like to stay online, please do so. If you don't want to hear about what I do with my private clients, that's absolutely okay. I will not take it personally, but now is the time for you to log off. Okay, cool. Great. Okay, so everyone who's still with me, thank you very much. I hope you had a good 2 hours. I need to just drink some water. I've done a lot of talking. That's good. So I want to tell you about my private client programs, because for some people, to be fair, you know, they're not massively interested in buying a business. They've joined this week and they're kind of curious, and it's kind of like, yeah, they just like finding out new things, which is absolutely fine. Those of you who are staying online with me now, I guess that you want to do this really seriously and you want to take it to the next level. So I want to tell you about my private client program, 2021. And we say this is for the professional deal maker. I mean, you know, we cover a lot in this week. I mean, you will learn so much this week about buying a business. But you know, we could talk about it for months and you still wouldn't have all the information. You know, we could go on forever. So we have this private client program. The kickoff Zoom meeting is on Monday. So this is the week to decide if you'd like to join me, because we start on Monday. So we have 2 levels of program. We have an intermediate program, which is a 6-month program starting on Monday. And we have an advanced level program, which is 12 months. And that starts at the same time on Monday. But the question is, you know, why would you be part of a program like this? You know, isn't like a 1-week Zoom course enough? Let me tell you why people join a program like this. You will learn a lot this week, but the private client program will help you implement what you've learned. And the key to being successful, I guess, in anything that you learn is actually doing something with it. It's not just learning it as an academic exercise, is actually putting it into practice. The private client program will help you implement and put into practice everything that you learn this week. And I need to emphasize, you will learn a lot this week. You will learn so much this week. In fact, you might learn so much, it starts to become a little overwhelming. And when you've got a longer program to sort it out in your mind and get everything in order, people find that very helpful. It will do several things. It will increase your knowledge. You'll learn new stuff during our 6 or 12 months together. It will massively increase your confidence. Some of the questions I was being asked earlier, people were saying, you know, how do I know if I'm going to be taken seriously if I'm 21? You know, won't people spot? Someone else said, won't someone spot that I'm a newbie? Well, yes, if you don't have the confidence, yes, they will spot it. So you need to increase your confidence, increase your knowledge. It will increase your motivation. I think it's very easy if you went off by yourself, you send out a few hundred letters, you get some people phone you, some people, the calls don't go as well as you hope they would, and you lose your motivation. And that would be a shame because you're missing an incredible opportunity. So you need to be around the right people to keep your motivation level high. People also join this program because they can utilize my deal team. Now, during this week, I will show you how to build your own deal team. And that might be enough for some people. Others say, well, actually, Jonathan, you've got a tried and tested team. I'd like to use that team. You'll also have my ongoing personal support during the program, and you're going to immediately become part of a growing community of over 100 deal makers. So from a networking perspective, you are immediately part of this community. And this is where you can share deals, you can get advice from other people, you can team up with other people, you can find the person who knows more about your sector to become your advisor, your consultant from this community. And you will actually do something rather than just thinking and talking about it. So you will actually buy a business rather than being one of these people who endlessly talks about they're getting around to it. It will help you overcome procrastination. So let me tell you about the intermediate program first. And this will take you to a whole new level of knowledge and confidence. And it's ideal for someone who wants to buy a small business. So you want to buy a business, you want to do it right, it's worth investing in the knowledge and the confidence to get it right. So this is perfect. This program is absolutely perfect for someone who wants to buy a small business. You don't have to do the advanced program. This intermediate program is absolutely perfect for you if you want to do this. So it's 6 months of Zoom meetings with the entire group. Now, what you're on right now is a webinar where you can hear me, but I can't see you or hear you. It's one way. But with the private client group, you see everyone's face on the screen. Anyone can raise their hand and speak. And this is where we do hot seats, problem solving. You've been talking to a tough guy negotiator and you want to know what the next move should be. Well, come onto the Zoom every month, tell us what the challenge is, and we'll solve the challenge. They're an awful lot of fun, far more interactive than these webinars. So you get 6 months of support and guidance. Now, that is enough time to buy that business. Okay, if we get started Monday morning, from next Monday, that will give you enough chance that 6 months to buy the business. We've got to get started on Monday, and I will be able to support and guide you through that first acquisition. And our focus is getting you started, building deal flow, and then closing that first deal. And I'm going to give you some additional resources in addition to the program, because I want you to have everything you need to be as successful at this as possible. I don't want to hold anything back. So I'm going to give you this entire fast track program, the reference materials, 250 pages. We're going to give it to you in a nice binder, all printed out, all the slides. So I'm not suggesting you do this, okay? But you could join the private client program today and not come back for the rest of the week. I'm not suggesting you do that, but because we give it to you as a reference guide, you've got absolutely everything you need. You can go through to, I don't know, the deal sourcing section. There's the deal sourcing section, and this will sit on your shelf as a resource library forever. I'm also going to introduce you to my deal team, because I think that if you've got a great lawyer, a great accountant, great HR, great tax, great due diligence, great finance broker. I mean, if you're going to be raising money to buy businesses, you need a great finance broker. So I'm going to introduce you to my team, and my top deal lawyer, his name is John, who does all of my transactions. He does every single one of them. I can arrange for you to have a sit-down Zoom meeting with him where you can talk about the deal that you're thinking of doing, get some advice. It's completely free of charge. It's all included in this 6-month intermediate program. Now, for some people, the intermediate program is what they want, but they also want to, they're super serious about this. So the advanced program is for people who want to do multiple deals and build a group to exit. So these are the future multi-million exit people. And so this is a lesser group of people, but this is the group of people who are really, really aiming for the stars on this one. So it's 12 months of Zoom meetings with the entire group, 12 months of support and guidance. Because if you're going to be building a group, you can't do that in 6 months. You can buy the first business in 6 months, but businesses 2 and 3 follow quite quickly because you've got the momentum from the first one. So during the course of our year together, we'll build the group. I'm going to let you in on my deals. So there's a look over my shoulder as I'm doing them. So I'll communicate with you what I'm buying, how I'm buying it. I'll show you the accounts. I'm showing you how I valued it. And this, apart from just being quite interesting to know what someone else is doing, you'll see how I structure the deals, how I finance the deals, how I buy businesses using that business's own money. And I'll show you everything that you need so that you can actually take my deal structures and put them into your deal so you can replicate into your deals. And I'm going to give you some additional resources for those of you who join this week. Don't forget, we kick off on Monday. I'm going to give you all those reference materials. I'm going to give you the introduction to the deal team. I'll give you the introduction to the deal lawyer, plus deal advisory. Every deal that you look at, I'm going to review for you. You send it over to me, and I will tell you what I think you should be paying for the deal. I tell you what I think the business is worth. I tell you how I think you should structure the deal. Now, this is like having me on your deal team. So if you want to make smart deals, then I think you'll find that very helpful. And throughout the course of our year together, you can ask me any question, anytime. I don't give this to someone else to do. You can ask me the question and I will answer it. The answer will be from me. So this is a very, very personal service, but you've got access to me for the entire 12 months. Now, some people have told me that that is worth paying the entrance fee on its own, because it's like having me as part of their team. So I'm there to bounce ideas off. I'm there to share the deals. And also, if a deal goes a little bit wobbly, I'm there to help you rescue it as well. Plus, and this is a very big plus, okay? There's a huge plus here. This is the last time I'm running live workshops and doing training in person. And I asked me this 6 months ago, I never would have said it. The pandemic has changed our entire business model. Okay, but we've got venues booked at the end of the year and next year. So we're actually going to make this program that starts on Monday the last time where I have a live workshop content. Okay, you can attend these workshops virtually or in person. And I say virtually because we're going to live stream them. So I know I have people from overseas. I have people who, for whatever health reasons or travel reasons, they don't want to be in the room. Completely get that. So get that. Completely understand it. So you can attend virtually via a live stream as it happens. Or you can come along in person. So there are two-day workshops in London. You can come along to them free of charge. There's 2 days at the end of November and 2 days at the beginning of January. And you can listen to the guest presenters. I have got some amazing guest presenters. I have got deal makers coming along to speak at those workshops who do things that you just would not believe. And they're good speakers as well. None of my speakers are ever boring. You're going to meet my deal team. So up to then, your relationship with them might be Zoom based, but they'll be there at the event. You're going to meet past clients who are going to stand up on stage and tell you what deals they've done, how they've structured it, and how they've created their multi-million-pound businesses off the back of doing everything that I have coached and mentored them to do. And we're going to build your confidence with exercises and role plays. Now, don't let your heart sink when you hear the word role play. I mean, certainly when I hear that word, I always think, oh my goodness. But no, we're going to work through scenarios of, this is someone selling a business, this is someone buying a business. How do you negotiate the deal? And that massively builds your confidence. First of all, actually, it builds your confidence when you realize that everyone's as bad as you to start off with, and then you all get better together. So these 4 days of live stream training is for the people who join the private client program this week, and there are no extra charges for it at all. So the question is probably in your mind is, how much is it and what is the deal structure? Because I guess you expect a deal structure of some sort. So the intermediate level, which is the 6-month program, is 6 payments of $999 plus the VAT. Alternatively, a single payment, if you want the very best price, a single payment of $4,999 plus VAT. And obviously you can put that on a card or do a bank transfer if you prefer. Now, if you take the pay in full option, the $4,999 plus VAT option, then next week we are going to spend some time on a Zoom call, just you and me, where we are going to get your acquisition strategy absolutely nailed. And then there's the advanced level, which is 12 payments of $999 plus VAT. So you pay effectively £1,000 a month for the course of the year, or you can make a single payment of $999 plus the VAT. And if you take that pay in full option, then again, next week, you and I are going to get your strategy absolutely sorted, which is the bedrock of everything that you do. Now, there is a third option on the web page that I'm going to give you in a minute, and I only accept one person onto this, and I will tell you right now, it's expensive, it is very exclusive, and it's right for one person in 100. I'm not going to explain it now, quite simply because it's not going to be right for 99 people listening. The majority of people, the intermediate and the advanced programs are absolutely fine. 1 in 100 wants to do the special program, the VIP program, but that's on the website. And you can register online for all of the programs at the dealmakersacademy.com/private. Okay, that's where you register. That web page is there, and you can do it all online. If you need any help at all with that, then you just email Maria, hello@thedealmakersacademy.com. So Sean says, are the 2 workshops for advanced only, or will intermediate be allowed? No, it's for everyone who registers this week. So it's for intermediate and it's for advanced. So everyone gets access to the live workshops. And if you can't attend live, for example, you're overseas, and we have a lot of overseas clients, then we live stream it so you can actually watch on the internet as it happens in the room. So you can see all the presentations in the room as it happens. So those are our programs. If you would like to join, now is the time to do so, because we kick off on Monday. We've got a special Zoom on Monday to kick off. Jordan, just looking at your question here. Check that with Maria, but that's absolutely fine. That wouldn't be a problem at all. But just check that with Maria for me, okay? Maria in the office will be able to help you. hello@thedealmakersacademy.com. But if that's what you've got, that's absolutely fine. It's not a problem at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this up on the screen so that you've got that there for you. I'm going to see you back here at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for another 2 hours, all about the initial call with the prospect and getting to a price and a value for the business, which is one of my favorite sessions. Mark, yep, Maria will be able to help you with that. Paul, it's a good question. Paul says, if you register for the immediate, can you continue at the end onto the advanced? The answer, rather strangely, is no, because we just got a slightly different approach in the 2 groups. So it's not like a continuation. So I think you've got to make up your mind which is the most appropriate for you, whether it's the intermediate or whether it's the advanced, because because your starting point is slightly different and the way we do it is different. So it's not one, you can't kind of switch from one to the other. Hope that makes sense. If you've got any other questions, by the way, I've got a couple more questions, just pop them into the box. No problem, Craig, happy to be of help. Paul says, if I'm a beginner, what would you suggest? Well, I would actually say that the majority of the people on the webinar today are actually beginners. There are very, very few people who are at an advanced stage already. I think most people are at a beginner stage. I would say that the choice, whether you go for intermediate or advanced, depends upon the outcome that you want. Yeah, if you want to buy one business in the next 6 months, I mean, no one forces you to do it in the next 6 months, but if you want to have that capability, then the intermediate is fine. If you want to build a group and exit for the big bucks, if you really have big ambitions, then go for the advanced. Okay, so that's the decision-making process that you should apply, Paul. It's not really where you're starting now, it's where you want to be. Cool, got it, says Paul. Avi says, I bought 2 businesses so far, but now want to grow seriously. Which group should I consider? Well, if you want to grow seriously, then the advanced group, because I think that if you're going to do it properly, clearly you're committed if you bought 2 businesses so far. So I would choose the advanced out of the 2. Yeah, so Joseph says, part of the fast track is 2 free tickets to an event in January. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about here. That's a completely separate event. We haven't booked the date for that yet. We will let you know when that is booked. Sergio says, I'd love to join the advanced. You mentioned each group has different approach. Why both groups, intermediate and advanced? Or how are they different? All right. Well, they're different in we've got different outcomes. So with the intermediate, the outcome is to get 1 deal under your belt. With the advanced, the outcome is to get multiple deals and then to exit at some point in the future. So again, it depends upon your plans. Really, it depends what you intend doing. Paul, no, thank you. Avi, it doesn't matter if you can't attend the Zoom on Monday. Again, it's recorded. We record everything. So if you miss something, you haven't missed it forever. You just haven't been on the live event. Isaac, thank you very much. Look forward to that. Sean says, if I'm on the advanced program, what support is there for me outside of the monthly Zoom? Well, let me just go back then, because let me just bring it up on the screen here. Yeah, okay. So you've got access to me for an entire year. You've got me looking at all your deals to the entire year. You've got the, are you asking specifically about support? Yeah. So that's really the support that you need. This is, I'm not going to fob you off onto someone else to look after you. I am the person who is going to be supporting you during these transactions. And that's as much or as little as you need for the 12 months. We don't put a cap on it. We don't say you've asked too many questions. Paul, we're going to send you the link to the recordings tomorrow when we have the link, because we need to upload the recording first. Okay. And how long do you have access to the recordings? Forever. Well, they're on YouTube. It's a private YouTube channel for as long as YouTube exists, I guess. So I imagine that's going to be a very long time. No problem at all, Paul. Any other questions about our intermediate or our advanced program? Let me just put up on the screen that URL so you know where to go if you'd like to join us. And then Maria will look after you and make sure you've got everything that you want, that you need. Let me just go back to this. Hang on, let me go back to this. Okay, so it's the dealmakersacademy.com/ why can't I find it? /private. There you go, it's easy to remember. dealmakersacademy.com/private. Let's find that for you. There you go. dealmakersacademy.com/private. Sean says, joining advanced now, very excited. Good stuff, Sean. Would love VIP, cannot afford that amount. Yeah, it's expensive. It's deliberately expensive because it's very exclusive. Would love to one-to-one strategy. That's cool. Excited to be involved. Fantastic. Brilliant, Sean. Very good. Maria's going to look after you, okay, and set you up. Sebastian says, I'm in, Jonathan. Advanced for me. Fantastic. Good to have you, Sebastian. Maria's going to look after you, okay? Be great to see the intermediate and the advanced slides. Well, Paul, you asked me a moment ago, weren't you, about the recordings? It'll all be at the end of the recordings. This is all part of the recording. So it'll all be at the end of the recording. So you can watch this back tomorrow if you want to, okay? Was it you asking about the recordings? Was that a different Paul? No, it's the same Paul. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, right. Oh, another question. Jordan says, I'm not entirely sure if I understand the question. Is the acquisitions 12 at 6? Jordan, I'm not sure if I asked the question. I think you asked me something earlier because you've already booked on this, haven't you? I think you've already booked. Let Maria in the office help you with that and just clarify that, because I think something's not got a bit lost in translation, but we can sort that out for you. It's not a problem. We'll be able to help you with that. Good stuff. Okay, right. So if you'd like to join us, that's where you go to the dealmakersacademy.com/private. Okay, I've been asked if I can just go through these slides again. So I'll go through them. I'll go through them quickly, just so everyone's very clear on this. So let's just go back. So this is the intermediate program. 6 months of Zoom meetings, including hot seats, problem solving. And I'd actually say that one of the benefits of being part of a group like that is that you will look forward to that Zoom meeting. You know, when you see 100 people on the screens, it's exciting. I mean, there's a real buzz and anticipation in that group. You'll get 6 months of support and guidance, and focus on getting started, building deal flow and closing that first deal. And we're going to give you a printed manual, all these slides. So you've got them in a nice bound manual to put up on your shelf. And I'm going to introduce you to my deal team. So you'll have a great set of contacts to get going. And I'm going to give you a session. If you're based in the UK, this is specifically UK law, you see, with my top deal team lawyer in the UK. The advanced program is for people who want to do multiple deals and build a group to exit. So we've got 12 months of Zoom meetings. We've got 12 months of support and guidance. I will share with you every time I buy a business, I'll send you the details so you know exactly how I did it. We're going to give you all those printed materials, my deal team, my deal lawyer, and deal advisory. So with the 12-month program, I will look at every deal that you are interested in doing, and I will advise on it as in terms of structure and value. So I'll make sure that you are getting yourself the best deal, really. And you can ask me any question at any time about any business that you are looking at. Plus, it's a big plus, you'll have access to these 4 days of workshops where during those workshops, guest presenters, meet my deal team, past clients, we're going to build your confidence, and there's no extra charge for those workshops. This is the last time I'm running those workshops, and you can come to those workshops if you're intermediate or advanced. It makes no difference, and this is the last time I'm doing these workshops simply because the world has changed. I'm doing so much more on Zoom, and I've got so many deals myself. I can no longer take days and days out. There's a cost to me of doing that. So just to remind you of the cost, if you go for the intermediate level, it's 6 payments of $999 plus VAT, or a single payment of $4,999 plus VAT. If you prefer to pay by bank transfer rather than card, then Maria in the office, hello at the Dealmakers Academy, can help you with that. Or we've got the advanced level, 12 payments of $999 plus the VAT, or a single payment of $999 plus the VAT. And again, if you choose the single payment option, we will have a Zoom next week, and we will make sure that your strategy is absolutely spot on. The VIP program is kind of a 1 in 100 program, and you can register for everything at the dealmakersacademy.com/private, okay? So let's see, I've got a couple more questions here. Are the monthly meetings the same for the intermediate and advanced? Yes, they are. Is the advanced group more intimate? Oh, you don't want the advanced group. Good question. Is the advanced group more intimate? Is it still the 100 plus people? Now, the benefit is in having 100 plus people because you've got more ideas, more input, more stories, more successes, more deals to share. You don't want to be in a group with like 6 people. You want to be in a big group. And thanks for today's training. Sergio, absolute pleasure to have you. Sean, all signed up. Fantastic, Sean. Good to have you on board as well. That's brilliant. Okay. Right. I think we are done for today. Yes, we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave this up on the screen if you want to go over to that webpage to get registered. We're going to call it a day now, and I will see you at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.